Chapter 463. The blood on Emperor Zhou's face instantly drained, and he was as pale as a sheet. He opened his mouth and seemed to have used up all his strength to ask, "What's the matter?" She really said that? She really hates me to the core. "I'll do my best to fulfill Mother's dying wish," said Xiu lightly. The conversation between the two of them caused everyone present to be confused. Back then, Emperor Zhou doted on Consort 1 a lot, but it seemed like Consort 1 had a deep hatred for Emperor Zhou. Everything about Heaven's Canopy was even more mystifying. Why is this Consort 1's last wish? A thought suddenly surfaced in Chu Liuyue's mind. Could it be that Xiu's birth mother is someone from Heaven's Canopy? This is the only way to explain why Xiu has such outstanding talent and abilities, as well as the previous battle outside Heaven's Canopy. Emperor Zhou's expression changed and he seemed to make up his mind in the end as he said solemnly, "Xiu, I've let your mother down, but there's nothing I can do about it. Originally, I didn't plan to go to Heaven's Canopy, but I have to go now." Heaven's Canopy was right in front of him. As long as he continued to break through, he could successfully enter. That was a completely different world. After Consort 1's death, he was filled with regret. He even hid his abilities and did nothing for so many years. Originally, he had wanted to live the rest of his life peacefully, but now, as long as he took a step forward, everything would be different. The scales in his heart had already tilted to one side. However, Xiu was unmoved and smiled faintly. "It's fine if you want to go as long as you return that item to me." Emperor Zhou's expression changed. "You want to snatch this item away? It originally belonged to Mother. How can you say that I snatched it away?" Slight mockery flashed across Xiu's eyes. Besides, Mother never agreed to leave this item to me. Back then he had used all sorts of methods to obtain this item. Rather than saying that he had snatched it, it was more likely that he had snatched it from his mother. After being exposed by Xiu, Emperor Zhou was very embarrassed and he flew into a rage. "Xiu, over the years we have never mistreated you. Is this how you treat me?" He had thought that Xiu was born with a weak body. He had even spent a long time looking for a celestial physician to treat him. In the end it was just a scam. Xiu's eyebrows moved slightly and he suddenly laughed. "Imperial Father, if you knew about this earlier, would you still treat me like this?" Emperor Zhou suddenly choked and his face flushed red, but he couldn't say a single word. Xiu's expression became even more sarcastic. If Emperor Zhou knew that there was nothing wrong with his body and that he was very talented, he would have done something to him long ago. How could there be such a day? The so-called good was built on the basis that Xiu wouldn't pose any threat to him. Just like how he always said how much he loved his mother, wasn't he the one who hurt her the most in the end and even caused her to die of depression? To Xiu, Emperor Zhou's words were a joke. Seeing Xiu's penetrating gaze, Emperor Zhou swallowed his words of defense. Finally, all the emotions on his face disappeared and only coldness was left. "If you want to stop me, we'll have to see if you have the ability." Then he started to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force again. The seal had already disappeared and all the energy in his body had already flowed out. As long as he broke through the last stage 7 warrior barrier, he could successfully enter Heaven's Canopy. Xiu raised his hand. Buzz. The sound of a sword rang. The silver longsword that was previously stabbed into the ground quickly flew over and landed in his hands. He crossed his legs and tightly held the sword with both hands as he stared closely at Emperor Zhou. Sword up. Sword down. An incomparably tyrannical sword chi swept across. The jade slabs on the ground shattered and flew up into the air. Then they silently turned into powder in the terrifying sword aura. When Emperor Zhou saw Xiu attack, he already felt that something was amiss. When he saw the sword aura coming straight for him, his heart skipped a beat. Xiu's abilities have actually reached that of a stage 6 warrior. When a cultivator was breaking through, they usually needed to focus. The higher their cultivation level, the more so. Emperor Zhou originally wanted to set up a barrier to block all attacks. But once Xiu attacked, he knew that he couldn't do it. Helplessly, he could only temporarily stop and turn around to receive Xiu's attack. Fountain and river fall. A blue origin power gushed out from his palm. Then it was the second and third force. The force that surged out was like a stream that quickly merged together and became a raging river. Vaguely, one could even hear the sound of the water flowing. That river-like origin power poured down in torrents. The sharp sword aura immediately arrived. The two forces harshly clashed against each other. In an instant the sword aura entered the river and water splashed everywhere. Emperor Zhou secretly heaved a sigh of relief. But the next moment he saw that the blue river suddenly split in the middle. It completely split into two. Emperor Zhou's expression froze. The sword aura's attack didn't seem to weaken at all. The force contained in the sword aura was even stronger than expected. Then the sword aura went against the flow. The strong aura made Emperor Zhou's entire body tense up. His force was completely pierced through. That sword aura went straight for his face. He went on his toes and rapidly retreated. But at this moment he suddenly felt a biting cold wind coming from behind him. Without thinking he dodged to the side. He hurriedly looked over and realized that the one attacking him was actually the red-tailed flood dragon. When the red-tailed flood dragon didn't hit its target, it became even more irritable. Half of the sky reverberated with its low and forceful roar. The spectators on the ground were also affected by the strong suppression, and their expressions changed. Those who weren't strong enough even directly vomited blood. However, that suppression didn't land on Chu Liyue. There seemed to be an invisible barrier that blocked the red-tailed flood dragon's suppression. Chu Liyue surveyed her surroundings and blinked. So many people were affected, but why wasn't she affected? Then her gaze landed on Xue Xue. I'm a legendary fiend. What's a mere red-tailed flood dragon to me? The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Liyue was enlightened. She had forgotten about this. The legendary three-eyed eagle was in my dantian. Even though outsiders didn't know about it, fiends were very sensitive to such things. That red-tailed flood dragon is the fiend guarding country Yao Chen's palace. Why would it attack Emperor Zhou? Chu Liyue softly muttered. Just as she was secretly confused, that sword aura had already landed on Emperor Zhou. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from iYuan. Chapter 464. Emperor Zhou originally wanted to avoid it, but the sword aura was too fast. The cold aura brushed past his neck. The item hanging on his neck suddenly broke. It flew toward Rongxiu. Emperor Zhou was shocked and immediately reached out to snatch it, but he still missed it by a hair's breadth. Just as he was about to chase after it, the red-tailed flood dragon rushed forward again. It swung its tail and slapped Emperor Zhou. Emperor Zhou was caught off guard and his back was harshly hit. His body flew out uncontrollably. At this point that item had already landed in Rongxiu's hands. Chu Liyue focused on it and saw that it was actually a black bone necklace with a ring hanging on it. The ring was bronze in color and there seemed to be mysterious black patterns carved on it, making it look very mysterious. Rongxiu looked down at the ring and his long black eyelashes covered his eyes. He pressed his thin lips against each other, and his jade-like chin seemed to tense up for a moment. His face didn't reveal any expression, but Chu Liyue's heart suddenly ached. Rongxiu, return the item to me. Emperor Zhou forcefully stabilized his body and hurriedly looked at Rongxiu. Rongxiu's expression changed slightly as he flipped his wrist and kept the ring. If mother was still around, she definitely wouldn't agree to let me return the item to you. You. Emperor Zhou originally wanted to argue, but he couldn't say anything when he met Rongxiu's deep and penetrating eyes. It was as if every word he said would cause him to be mocked even more deeply. Just as he was feeling very conflicted, the red-tailed flood dragon rushed forward again. The man and the fiend were in a fight. Emperor Zhou's current strength was at the peak of stage 6, and the red-tailed flood dragon was a 7th-grade fiend. Logically speaking, they should be able to fight to a draw. But very quickly Emperor Zhou was at a disadvantage and he kept retreating. More importantly, the force in his body seemed to be continuously spreading in all directions, and his aura gradually weakened. Not long after, his level actually dropped by a stage. But this was only the beginning. As time passed, the red-tailed flood dragon left more and more wounds on his body. In the end, Emperor Zhou couldn't retaliate at all. His realm had even fallen below that of a rank 4 warrior. Bang! Emperor Zhou finally couldn't take it anymore and fell to the ground harshly. In an instant dust flew everywhere. He clutched his chest and coughed violently a few times. His mouth was full of blood and he was on the verge of death. Xiao did not seem to be interested in these things. He turned around and walked towards Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue could not help but ask in a low voice, "That red-tailed flood dragon seems to have a grudge against His Majesty?" Xiao smiled faintly and said carelessly, "That's right. It once received Mother's grace." So that was the case. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. Then he carefully sized up Xiao and sighed in his heart. I never asked Xiao why he purposely pretended to be sick. Previously, I always thought that he did it for the throne, but I didn't expect him to do it for the person sitting on the throne. He schemed for so many years just to deal with Emperor Zhou. Just as she was about to say something, she suddenly felt a gaze coming from the side. He turned around to look. Rongjio looked at Xiao with a complicated expression. He was not stupid. After so many things had happened, he had more or less guessed it. "Seventh brother, I have something to talk to you about in private. I wonder if you have time now?" Xiao lightly smiled and nodded. Outside Taihe Palace, Chu Luiyue and Elder Yi were talking. "Here, don't worry. These are all small injuries. They'll heal after some time." Chu Luiyue looked at Elder Yi in front of him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Ever since Xiao and Rongjio entered Taihe Palace to discuss, Elder Yi kept asking her questions, afraid that there was something wrong with her body. "Didn't you already take my pulse? Don't you even trust yourself?" Elder Yi coughed. "I'm just worried about you." Thinking about everything that happened previously, he still felt a little scared. If it weren't for my disciple being outstanding and strong enough, it would have been really dangerous. Chu Luiyue decisively changed the topic. "Elder Zhongyi has already left?" Elder Yi sneered. "Situ Xianxia is already dead. Why is he still here? If he continues, he'll be the next to die." Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment. "Elder Zhongyi seems to be a very vengeful person. What happened today? Haha, that fellow has always been like this. However, he doesn't dare to leak this news to Mingyue Tianshan. If not, even he will have to bear the consequences. Even though Zhongyi is a stage 6 warrior, he doesn't dare to mess around." Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. Elder Zhongyi has a very good relationship with Situ Xianxia. If not, he wouldn't have spent so much effort to save her personally. Now that he personally saw Situ Xianxia die in front of him, she felt that he wouldn't take it lying down. Also, country Xingluo's Situ Xianxia is the eldest princess after all. Situ Yen dotes on his daughter a lot. In his anger, he might do something. Elder Yi waved his hand. "Don't worry. Situ Yen won't dare to mess around." Situ Xianxia swallowed the energy in the bronze cauldron to increase her abilities and even tried to kill you. She was in the wrong first. Furthermore, she was taken over later on. At that moment, she was already dead. In the end, she reaped what she sowed. Everyone could see it clearly. How could Situ Yen still have the face to mention this? No matter how much he likes Situ Xianxia, he can't give up the entire country Xingluo for her. Hence, in the end, everything can only be reduced to nothing. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly and looked at the tightly locked door. I wonder how their discussion went. Emperor Zhou had already been locked up, and the red-tailed flood dragon was suppressed in the deep Xian formation again. The mess from before was more or less cleaned up by Dao. On the surface, everything seemed to be gradually returning to normal. But everyone knew that the outcome was still in the hands of the two of them. Elder Yi followed his line of sight and let out a long sigh. I didn't expect that after so many years it's still... Chu Luiyue suddenly asked, Emperor Zhou? Master, did you already know that His Majesty... Elder Yi hesitated for a moment, nodded and then shook his head. I only knew that His Majesty and Rue had a falling out back then because he did something wrong to her, but I didn't know why he did it. Who can he blame for ending up in this state? Chu Luiyue thought for a while and asked, Did Emperor Zhou come from country Xingluo? Consort Wan came from heaven's canopy? Elder Yi paused for a moment and smiled bitterly. I'm not sure about this. His Majesty met her by chance when he went out. He only said that she was the orphan of a fallen family, but nobody knows the details. Back then she was doted on and quite a few people secretly investigated her background, but they didn't find anything. Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. If that was the case, it would make sense. Creak. Taihe Palace's door suddenly opened. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 465. Chu Luiyue and Elder Yi looked up at the same time. Not far behind the two of them, the various family heads were all quiet as they looked over. A figure walked out of it. Within a night, country Yaochen had a shocking change. First, Rongjio rebelled, occupied the imperial city and forced the emperor to abdicate. Then country Xingluo's eldest princess, Situ Xingchen, swallowed a strange force and continuously broke through. She tried to kill Chu Luiyue, but she was eventually killed. Finally, Prince Li Rongxiu fought with Emperor Zhou to take back his birth mother, concubine Wan, and won with one strike. Too many things happened on this day and they quickly spread throughout the entire imperial city. Nobody thought of keeping the news a secret. In fact, with such a big commotion, it was simply impossible to pretend that nothing had happened. Besides, the fight for the throne had huge implications. All the family heads personally saw everything that happened, so they would definitely tell their family members so that they would know how to deal with the situation. At that moment, everyone in the imperial city was talking about this. Very quickly the latest news came. The third prince, Rongjio, ascended the throne and Prince Li Rongxiu chose to return to Mingyue Tianshan. As for Emperor Zhou, he was sent to Qingyi Palace to live out his remaining years as the Emperor Emeritus. Everyone had different opinions about this result. After all, everyone already knew that Rongxiu wasn't really sick. On the contrary, he was very talented in cultivation and he was very capable. Previously, many people guessed that he and Rongjio would fight for the throne. They didn't expect him to return to Mingyue Tianshan. As for Emperor Zhou, what kind of ending would he have after being forcefully chased down from the throne? However, after Situ Xingchen died, country Xingluo didn't have any reaction, as if they had directly ignored it. Princely Mansion, Bamboo Forest. Chu Luiyue and Rongxiu sat opposite each other with a half-finished chessboard in between them. The wind blew and the bamboo leaves rustled. Rongxiu put down the chess piece in his hand. Do you think that I'm too unreasonable? Chu Luiyue looked up and asked in shock. Your Highness, why do you say that? Rongxiu paused for a while. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. Is he talking about Emperor Zhou? Your Highness naturally has your own difficulties and reasons for doing so. Chu Luiyue shook his head gently. As long as your Highness thinks it's right, then it's right. Rongxiu's thin lips slightly raised. He suddenly leaned closer, fixed his eyes on her and asked jokingly, Your meaning is that no matter what this prince does, you will stand by this prince's side? His voice was low and lazy, and there was a careless smile at the corner of his mouth. Of course. Chu Luiyue looked into his deep eyes and said firmly. Her expression was so serious and sincere. Rongxiu's heart seemed to be hit by something and a dark light flashed in his eyes. Your Highness is mine. I will naturally protect your Highness. Chu Luiyue smiled and her eyes curved as if she was joking. However, the gaze in her eyes was firm and unquestionable. Rongxiu knew that she meant what she said. He kept quiet for a while and suddenly said, Actually, this isn't quite accurate. Chu Luiyue was dazed. Rongxiu's long fingers lightly tapped on the chessboard as if he was smiling. I'm not considered your man yet. His voice was exceptionally low and his last syllable was slightly dragged out. When it landed in her ears, it was as if something was lightly scratching her heart. Chu Luiyue suddenly reacted and couldn't help but curse in her heart. Demon. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you, Your Highness. I'm going to the Tianling dynasty now and you're also going back to Mingyue Tianshan. I'm afraid we won't be able to see each other for a while. Rongxiu raised his brows slightly. It seems like you're in a hurry. Chu Luiyue said faintly, You can't be in a hurry. You've already prepared everything for the wedding. At this point, Rongxiu felt a little regretful. I've indeed planned to get married long ago, but too many things happened in between. I didn't expect it to be delayed until now. Now both of them had things to do, so they definitely wouldn't be able to get married in time. Seeing that Rongxiu seemed to be really disappointed, Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. In any case, there's an engagement. It doesn't make much of a difference whether we get married earlier or later, right? Rongxiu looked at her meaningfully and smiled faintly. Of course there's a difference. I've been waiting for too long. A trace of doubt flashed across Chu Luiyue's heart. It had only been a few months since they first met. Why did Rongxiu sound like he had been waiting for a long time? But as long as it's you, I can keep waiting. Sensing Rongxiu's deep and gentle gaze, Chu Luiyue sighed softly. Actually, the road ahead was full of dangers and difficulties. She didn't know when she would see him again. Your Highness, are you really going back to Mingyue Tianshan? The matters in the imperial capital have already been settled. There's no need to continue staying. Then let's get married when I return from the Tianling dynasty. How about it? Rong Xiu's expression turned serious. After a moment he bent down and kissed Chu Liyue's forehead. His voice was light but it contained too much. Patience, tolerance, waiting, love and trust. Chu Liyue lowered her eyes and thought for a long time. Finally she seemed to have made up her mind. Your Highness, I have something to tell you. Rong Xiu nodded and pretended to listen. Chu Liyue's lips were tightly pursed. She looked into Rong Xiu's eyes and said word by word, I'm going to the Tianling dynasty this time. The date of my return is not set. My enemy is there. Digression. Kavinka is dead. 4 updates today. 6 updates tomorrow. Happy 520 mobile users. Please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 466. The blood drained from Emperor Jiawen's face and he turned extremely pale. He opened his mouth and seemed to use all the strength in his body to ask, did she really say that? She really hated him to the core. Did she really say that? I will naturally do my best to fulfill my mother's request before she died. Rong Xiu said indifferently. The conversation between the two of them left almost everyone at the scene confused. Emperor Jiawen had doted on concubine Wan a lot in the past. He had doted on her a lot. But now it seemed that concubine Wan hated Emperor Jiawen deeply. Furthermore, everything about the Sky Screen realm was even more confusing. Why was this concubine Wan's last wish? Chu Liyue suddenly had a guess. Could it be that Rong Xiu's birth mother was someone from the Sky Screen realm? That was the only explanation for Rong Xiu's outstanding talent and strength, as well as the battle outside the Sky Screen realm. Emperor Jiawen's expression changed several times. Finally he seemed to have made up his mind. He said in a low voice, Rong Xiu, I have let your mother down. However, since things have come to this, there is nothing I can do. Originally I had no intention of going to the Sky Screen realm. However, I have no choice but to go now. The Sky Screen realm was right in front of him. As long as he continued to break through, he would be able to enter it successfully. That was a completely different world. After concubine Wan's death, he had been filled with regret. He had even hidden his strength from then on, doing nothing for so many years. Originally he had thought of living a peaceful life. However, if he took a step forward now, everything would be different. The balance in his heart had already tilted to one side. Rong Xiu was unmoved. He only smiled faintly. It's fine if you want to go as long as you return that thing to me. Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. You want to snatch that thing away? That thing originally belonged to my mother. How can you say that you want to snatch it away? A hint of mockery flashed across Rong Xiu's eyes. Furthermore, his mother had never agreed to leave this thing to him. Back then he had used all sorts of methods to obtain this thing. Rather than snatching it away, he had snatched it from his mother. Having been exposed by Rong Xiu, Emperor Jiawen was extremely embarrassed. In the end he flew into a rage out of humiliation. Rong Xiu, for so many years I have never treated you unfairly. Is this how you treat me? He had thought that Rong Xiu was born with a weak body, and he had been distressed for a long time because of this. He had found countless doctors to treat him. In the end it was just a scam. Rong Xiu's brows moved slightly and he suddenly laughed. Imperial Father, if you had known about this earlier, would you still treat your son like this? Emperor Jiawen suddenly choked. His face flushed red but he couldn't say a single word. Rong Xiu's expression became more and more mocking. If Emperor Jiawen had known that there was nothing wrong with his body and that his talent was excellent, he would have made a move on him long ago. How could there be a day like this? The so-called good was only built on the basis that he wouldn't pose any threat to him. Just like how he had always said how much he loved his mother, but in the end, wasn't he the one who hurt her the most and even caused her to die of depression? In Rong Xiu's opinion, Emperor Jiawen's words were simply a joke. When he saw Rong Xiu's penetrating gaze, Emperor Jiawen swallowed his words of defense. Finally, all the expression on his face disappeared, leaving only a cold and hard expression. You want to stop me? Let's see if you have the ability to do so. After saying that, he once again began to devour the surrounding heaven and earth energy. The seal had already disappeared and all the energy in his body had already surged out. As long as he broke through the final barrier of a stage 7 martialist, he could successfully enter the sky screen realm. Xiu raised his hand. Buzz. The sound of a sword instantly rang out. The silver longsword that had been stabbed into the ground earlier quickly flew over and landed in his hand. His feet shifted slightly, both hands gripping the sword hilt tightly as he stared intently at Emperor Jiawen. The sword rose. The sword fell. An incomparably tyrannical sword aura swept across. The jade slabs on the ground shattered and flew into the air. Then they were silently annihilated into dust by the terrifying sword aura. When Emperor Jiawen saw Xiu make a move, he already had a bad feeling. When he saw that sword aura heading straight for him, his heart skipped a beat. Xiu's strength had actually reached a stage 6 martialist. When cultivators were breaking through, they often needed to focus. The higher the level, the more it was so. Emperor Jiawen originally planned to set up an enchantment to block all attacks outside. But the moment Xiu made a move, he knew that it would not work. Helpless, he could only stop temporarily and turn around to receive Xiu's attack. Mountains and rivers fall. A blue origin power surged out from his palm. Then a second, a third. The surging origin power was like streams, quickly fusing together, turning into a surging river. Vaguely, one could even hear the sound of surging water. That river-like origin power poured down in torrents. The piercingly cold sword aura arrived in an instant. The two forces collided fiercely. In an instant, that sword aura sank into the river, splashing water everywhere. Emperor Jiawen secretly heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. But in the next moment he saw that the blue river suddenly split in the middle. Completely split into two parts. The expression on Emperor Jiawen's face suddenly froze. The attack on that sword aura did not seem to be weakened at all. The power contained in the sword chi was even stronger than he had expected. Following that sword aura went all the way up. The tyrannical aura caused Emperor Jiawen's entire body to tense up. Swish. His origin power was completely pierced. That sword aura headed straight for his face. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and quickly retreated. But at this moment he suddenly felt as if a biting cold wind was attacking his back. Without thinking, he dodged to the side. Hurriedly looking to the side, he found that the one attacking him was actually the scarlet-tailed flood dragon. Missing its attack, the scarlet-tailed flood dragon became even more irritable. Half the sky reverberated with its deep and powerful roar. The onlookers on the ground also felt this powerful pressure, and their expressions all changed. Some of the weaker ones even directly vomited blood. But that pressure did not fall on Chu Liyue's body. Imperceptibly, there seemed to be a transparent barrier that blocked the scarlet-tailed flood dragon's pressure outside. Chu Liyue looked around and blinked. So many people were affected, but why was she the only one not? After that, her gaze descended onto Shui. I am a divine beast. What is a mere scarlet-tailed flood dragon to me? The three-eyed godly eagle's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Liyue suddenly understood. She had forgotten about this. The three-eyed godly eagle was in her dantian. Although outsiders did not know about it, demonic beasts were very sensitive to such things. That scarlet-tailed flood dragon is the guardian demonic beast of the Yaochen kingdom. Why would it attack Emperor Jiawen now? Chu Liyue murmured. Just as she was feeling puzzled, the sword chi had already landed on Emperor Jiawen's body. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website. Chapter 467. It was quiet in the bamboo forest. Only the sound of the bamboo leaves rustling in the wind could be heard. Chu Liyue felt that everything around her seemed to have stopped in an instant. Only the eyebrows of the person in front of her were exceptionally clear. Her voice was light and seemed to dissipate in the wind in an instant. However, she knew that Xiu had heard it. This was her biggest secret. She originally thought that it would be difficult to say it out loud. However, in the face of their impending separation, she realized that it was much easier to be honest with Xiu than she had imagined. This was because she really wanted to continue being with him. Xiu's eyes seemed to surge with emotions. After a moment he looked into her eyes and said, "If you can't go back, I'll go." Chu Liwei was suddenly stunned. Your Highness, why don't you ask me why I have enemies in the Tianling dynasty? 10 years ago she was just an abandoned good-for-nothing daughter of a declining aristocratic family in country Yaochen. Logically speaking, it was impossible for her to have anything to do with the Tianling dynasty. However, Rongxiu didn't seem surprised or curious. The corners of his lips curled up slightly as he smiled. I only care about whether Yu's revenge is satisfying. Chu Liwei was stunned. Rongxiu leaned close to her ear. His warm breath sprayed on her ear, causing it to heat up slightly. Wherever Yu goes I will go too. The sky was clear and there were no clouds for thousands of miles. Jian Fengqi flew on his sword and Chu Liwei stood behind him. Are you really leaving just like that? Jian Fengqi glanced at Chu Liwei. You won't be able to see your father and fiancé for a long time after this. Chu Liwei raised her eyebrows slightly. Young Master Jian, can you help to bring them to the Tianling dynasty? Jian Fengqi immediately said, no. The Tianling dynasty's control was very strict. Everyone's identity had to go through heavy screening. In particular, the place they were heading to this time was the imperial capital of the Tianling dynasty, Xiling. Even if they could cross the heaven's canopy and enter the Western Mausoleum, they would not be able to do so without a suitable reason and identity. Chu Liwei shrugged. This time her future was unknown, so it would be more convenient for her to go alone. Jian Fengqi glanced at her from head to toe, and the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up into an evil smile. However, that princely really hid himself well. With his strength, entering heaven's canopy shouldn't be a problem. Chu Liwei glanced at him. Jian Fengqi seemed to be very interested in Rongxiu and kept talking about him along the way. She shook her head again. He has his own plans. Seeing that Chu Liwei was still as impenetrable as ever, the smile on Jian Fengqi's face finally disappeared and he snorted. I really don't know what you're thinking being together with such a scheming person. Chu Liwei couldn't be bothered with him. The two didn't speak again. After about an hour they finally stopped at a mountain peak. Jian Fengqi jumped down and waved his sleeve lightly. Dust rose into the air. A teleportation array appeared in front of them. Chu Liu's eyes narrowed slightly, and she also jumped down and walked to Jian Fengqi's side. This is the teleportation array that I used to come here. Jian Fengqi lifted his chin. Chu Liwei frowned slightly. This mountain peak was southeast of the imperial capital and it was deserted. How could there be a teleportation array here? Seeing the shock and confusion on Chu Liu's face, Jian Fengqi thought that she was curious about the teleportation array, so he explained. This teleportation array can quickly send us to heaven's canopy. But to reach the Tianling dynasty, we still have to pass through 2 more teleportation arrays. Chu Liwei lightly nodded. Other than cultivators who were trying to break through to become stage 7 warriors and could take the initiative to summon heaven's canopy, everyone else had to personally go to where heaven's canopy was before they could enter. However, she was curious about something else. This teleportation array looks quite old. Jian Fengqi touched his chin. That's right. It also doesn't look like it's commonly used. I know about this because Mu Qing has said that we can go from here. Actually, I was also very curious when I came here. There's actually a teleportation array that connects to heaven's canopy here. Emperor Zhou had been to the Tianling dynasty before, so there was such a teleportation array in the imperial capital. However, it was a little strange for it to appear in such a place. Maybe it was built by cultivators in the past. Jian Fengqi didn't pay much attention to the teleportation array. As he spoke, he gathered force in his palm and slapped it on the teleportation array. A silver light flashed and the teleportation array was activated. The two of them instantly disappeared from their original spot. The surroundings were dark and Chu Liwei could only hear the sound of the endless space flowing past her ears. Luckily, Jian Fengqi had set up a barrier, so she didn't feel too much pressure. After some time, a ray of light finally appeared in front of her. Jian Fengqi said, "It's coming out soon." Chu Liu's heart suddenly tightened. The next moment the sky brightened up. She only felt a huge force coming from behind and pushing her and Jian Fengqi out. She staggered a step before she steadied herself. This is the heaven's canopy that the Tianling dynasty is in charge of guarding. Jian Fengqi raised his hand and pointed in front. Chu Liu's body stiffened and she slowly looked up. At this point the two of them were standing on a cliff. Below the cliff was an endless, turbulent black-blue ocean. In the distance where the ocean met the sky, a gigantic heaven's canopy fell from the dark sky. Thousands of streams of light flashed like a galaxy in the distance. The vast and boundless pressure of the heavenly Tao poured out, almost covering the entire world. And in the middle of the heaven's canopy, there was a group of soldiers wearing black armor and holding long swords. They were lined up neatly in a row. Even from such a distance, Chu Liyue could still clearly feel the murderous aura of those soldiers. In the entire Tianling dynasty, only the most elite and powerful soldiers were qualified to guard the heaven's canopy. Therefore all of these people were 1 in a million strong. They stood there, dignified and solemn as if they had already merged with the world. Chu Liyue's hands trembled slightly in her sleeves, and the blood in her body seemed to freeze in an instant. But there seemed to be something burning in her chest and abdomen about to explode. How familiar this scene was. In 1645 of the Tianling dynasty, she had just become of marriageable age and had personally come to inspect this place as the empress. At that time, thousands of soldiers had welcomed her respectfully. Their military flags had fluttered, and the honor guard had spread for hundreds of miles. At that time she had never imagined that one day she would come here again in such a manner. Jian Fengqi saw that Chu Liyue's expression seemed a little off. He couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" Chu Liyue's eyes flashed and a perfect smile appeared on her face. "I'm just a little nervous." "Young Master Jian, don't worry." Jian Fengqi nodded. After all, it was her first time here. It was normal to be nervous. "This is the Tianling dynasty's heaven's canopy. Who are you?" A dignified voice came from afar. "Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network." Chapter 468. Jian Fengqi threw out a token which floated in mid-air. A faint pressure spread from it. Jian Fengqi raised his voice. "Jian Fengqi from Dragon Teeth Mountain." "So it's young Master Jian." At the mention of Jian Fengqi's voice, the soldier's voice immediately became much more respectful. "May I know who is beside you? Take out the token that Mu Qinghe left for you," Jian Fengqi said softly. Chu Liyue took a deep breath and took out the token. It also floated in the air. "Chu Liyue from country Yaochen." Her voice sounded as clear and calm as usual, but in reality her palms were already wet. After verifying that their tokens were correct, that person said, "Vice Admiral Mu has already instructed that the two of you can enter together. Please." With that, a wave rippled above heaven's canopy. Immediately after, a long bridge extended from heaven's canopy and stopped in front of the two of them. Jian Fengqi and Chu Liyue looked at each other. "Let's go." With that, he took the lead and walked onto the long bridge. Chu Liyue took a deep breath and followed closely behind him. The two of them walked on the long bridge and got closer and closer to the entrance. Chu Liyue could already see the faces of the soldiers clearly. Looking at the entrance in front of her, her heart beat faster and faster. "Young Master Jian, Miss Chu, please." At this moment, a wave suddenly came from afar. Chu Liyue turned around and saw two figures appear on the cliff. It was a man and a woman who looked very young. Seeing the long bridge in front of them, the man laughed loudly. "The bridge just appeared. Yunji, we will definitely make it this time. You're not worried about being late, are you?" The woman chuckled. "Yunji has never been here before, so it's inevitable that I'm a little nervous." "Cousin, why are you making fun of me? Besides, I'm just worried that I'll delay you." The man laughed. "There's still some time before the deadline. Don't worry. Let's go. This time I'll show you the Tianling dynasty." The woman's face was filled with anticipation. The man tossed out the token in his hand. "I, Qin Shiyuan, disciple of the Soaring Cloud sect, have brought Zhao Yunji of the Suiyang Empire with me." Chu Liyue narrowed his eyes. So they were from the Soaring Cloud sect. From the looks of it, the woman was like her, brought here because she possessed the Daijing Yuan Meridian. She had thought that only the Black Cavalry, including Mu Qinghe, would do this. She did not expect the Soaring Cloud sect to send someone as well. It seemed that the scale of this matter had far exceeded her expectations. After Qin Shiyuan finished speaking, he put away the token and walked towards the bridge in high spirits. "Hold on." Jian Fengqi suddenly opened his mouth and said lazily, "This Lin Qiao was specially summoned for me and Lu Yu." According to the rules, They have to wait for us to enter and verify our identities before they can summon Lin Xiao again. What's with sharing a room with us? Before the soldier in charge of guarding the bridge could say anything, Qin Xian, who was behind him, laughed and said, "You too, it seems that you've just arrived. It shouldn't be a problem for you to lend us this Lin Xiao, right? If we go together we won't have to summon Lin Xiao again. Isn't that perfect?" Jian Fengqi crossed his arms as his lips curled up into a cold smile. "It seems that not only do you not understand the rules of first come, first served, even your ears are not very good. I already said that I don't agree. Did you not hear me?" "What perfect?" He did not think it was perfect at all. Chu Luiwei coughed softly. She almost forgot that Dragon Teeth Mountain and the Sky Soaring clan had been enemies for thousands of years, and there were countless grudges between them. Hence, Jian Fengqi naturally didn't like Qin Xian, who came from the Sky Soaring clan. Moreover, according to his picky personality, he would never agree to such a thing, let alone these two people. Jian Fengqi's words made Qin Xian's expression turn ugly. He had only asked to cross the Lin Xiao together. It was not a big deal, but the other party was so aggressive. Damn it. Saying these words in front of so many people made him lose even more face. Today was the first time he brought his cousin Zhao Yunji. If he admitted it now, how could he raise his head in front of his cousin in the future? His voice turned cold. "Young master, I only asked you for a small favor. Why do you have to be like this?" Jian Fengqi shrugged his shoulders. "Unfortunately, I have never liked to help." Qin Xian was so angry that he laughed. He tidied his clothes and raised his chin slightly. "It seems that this young master still does not know my identity. I am the younger brother of the Soaring Cloud sect master." Jian Fengqi raised his finger and shook it, interrupting Qin Xian's words. "Piske, I have no interest in your identity at all." As he spoke, he turned to look at the guards and raised his sword-like eyebrows. The two guards standing on both sides of the entrance looked at each other, then looked at Qin Xian and Jian Fengqi in the distance with a cold expression. "You should wait first." The smile on Qin Xian's face suddenly froze. The Soaring Cloud sect had a high status in the entire Tianling dynasty and was treated with respect wherever they went. He had never been treated like this before. He was about to go forward and argue with them, but he was pulled back by Zhao Yunji behind him. Zhao Yunji whispered, "Cousin, let's not argue with them. Let them go first." Jian Fengqi originally had one foot in the entrance, but when he heard this he looked back and laughed softly. Let them go. Why did it sound like they were in the wrong? The people of the Soaring Cloud sect were shameless, but he did not expect that the people they brought were also like this. Chu Luiwei held her breath and walked in through the entrance. The flowing light of heaven's canopy swept across her body, as if it wanted to see through her completely in an instant. Buzz. A faint sound was suddenly heard. There was a sudden movement in heaven's canopy. Chu Luiwei was shocked. This movement seemed to be because of the water droplets in her body. The surrounding soldiers noticed this movement and immediately looked at Chu Luiwei with vigilance. Even Jian Fengqi looked back. Chu Luiwei's mind moved and she forcefully suppressed the movement of the water droplets. The strange sound also disappeared in an instant. What happened just now? The soldiers on guard stared at Chu Luiwei, their eyes full of suspicion. Chu Luiwei shook her head innocently. I don't know either. Jian Fengqi looked up at heaven's canopy and frowned slightly. It should be a common movement. Only then did the soldiers relax a little. Sometimes heaven's canopy would indeed be like this. If there was really something wrong with Chu Luiwei, the movement would not have disappeared instantly. Seeing that the soldiers were still suspicious, Jian Fengqi smiled and said, "Don't tell me you don't trust the person Mu Qinghe chose?" The soldiers' expressions changed slightly. "Of course not. The two of you, please." Chu Luiwei felt as if a rock had been lifted from her heart. She walked forward and crossed heaven's canopy. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 469. After passing through heaven's canopy, the sky was bright. Chu Luiwei raised her hand to cover her eyes. After getting used to the light, she looked up ahead. Above the blue sky, bluish-purple clouds piled up and flowed with the wind. The black land was vast and boundless. At a glance, it was boundless. Where the sky and the earth met, there was a line of white. Behind the clouds, a bright orange-yellow color appeared, plating the clouds with a layer of warm light. On the ground, several teleportation portals were arranged in rows and slowly rotating. An indescribable pressure spread out. Chu Luiyue held her breath slightly. All of this scene was so familiar. But when she came again, she was in a different state of mind. Even her identity was completely different. This is the northern border of the Tianling dynasty. There are a total of 108 teleportation portals, all of which lead to different places in the Tianling dynasty. Jian Fengqi walked over from behind and stood beside Chu Luiyue. He pointed at the largest teleportation portal in front of them and smiled. The largest one goes to the imperial capital of the Tianling dynasty, Xiling. It can teleport thousands of people at once. Building a teleportation portal usually required the cooperation of mystic cultivators and martial artists, and it consumed a lot of energy. Ordinary teleportation portals could only teleport about 10 people. Portals of this scale were extremely rare. Even in the entire Tianling dynasty, there were only 5 portals. Each one consumed an unimaginable amount of manpower and resources. Chu Luiyue exhaled softly. She came from the capital to inspect heaven's canopy through this teleportation portal. Of course, she was very familiar with it. How is it? Is it like what you imagined? Jian Fengqi asked teasingly. In Jian Fengqi's opinion, with Chu Luiyue's background, she must be full of yearning and fantasizing about the Tianling dynasty. Not to mention people outside heaven's canopy. Even those who had seen many things in heaven's canopy were often shocked by this scene when they came here for the first time. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up and she nodded. The Tianling dynasty is indeed worthy of its reputation. Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows. That's nothing. When you get to the West Hill, you'll know how much fun there is in this world. Chu Luiyue gave him a meaningful look. She had no interest in the fun that he was talking about. Jian Fengqi inexplicably felt guilty and coughed while holding his fist. Cough, it's getting late. Let's hit the road first. As he spoke, he walked towards the teleportation array. However, right at this moment, a gust of cold wind suddenly assaulted them from behind. 2 figures quickly flashed past. He rushed right in front of them. With a leap, he landed on the teleportation array. Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. They were the 2 people who had been following them. Qin Shiyuan ignored Chu Luiyue and Zhao Yunji and said loudly to Zhao Yunji, "Yunji, don't worry. Using this teleportation array, we can reach Xiling very quickly. We will definitely make it in time." Zhao Yunji's beautiful eyes widened and she couldn't hide the shock on her face. I didn't expect there to be such a large teleportation array in this world. Not only is this teleportation array big, it's also very safe. There are hundreds of Xian arrays set up inside, enough to block all the spatial turbulence outside. It's no different from walking outside. Qin Shiyuan said lightly, but there was a hint of pride on his face. The first sect master of the Lingyun sect personally participated in the construction of this teleportation array. Zhao Yunji's eyes lit up when she heard that. She said with admiration, "The Lingyun sect is indeed amazing. Cousin, you were able to enter and be accepted as the sect master's disciple. You are truly a dragon among men." Qin Shiyuan felt refreshed and there was unconcealable pride in his eyes. "When we reach Xiling, I will personally bring you to the Lingyun sect to take a look." "Thank you, cousin." Qin Shiyuan was about to activate the teleportation array and leave. The smile on Jian Fengqi's face had already disappeared, and there was a hint of coldness in his icy eyes. "Wait." His voice seemed to be filled with ice shards, making people unconsciously feel a chill in their hearts. Although his tone was languid, there was a sense of superiority and majesty. Qin Shiyuan paused for a moment before looking over. He sized up Jian Fengqi and frowned slightly. He had never seen this person before, but this man's aura seemed to indicate that he was not an ordinary person. "Who gave you the guts to snatch it from me?" Qin Shiyuan sneered. "This isn't snatching. This teleportation array is meant to be used by whoever arrives first. We arrived before you, so naturally we will use it first." Jian Fengqi dug his ears. "What did you say? Is this person crazy?" Qin Shiyuan snorted and said, "Oh right. We don't like to share the teleportation array with others either. So you should wait for the next one. Yundi, let's go." Before the 2 of them could move, they heard a mocking voice coming from behind them. "So, the people of the Lingyun sect are all so shameless?" Jian Fengqi's words successfully made Qin Shiyuan's blood boil. He suddenly turned around and said angrily, "What did you say?" Jian Fengqi smiled and said, "Why, your ears are not working well again? How dare you? How dare you insult my sect? I think you're tired of living." What happened before was actually nothing. He did not intend to continue entangling with these two people, but they spoke arrogantly and insulted the Lingyun sect. He could not tolerate it. Chu Liwei thought to himself, this is nothing. Jian Fengqi once scolded the 9 elders of the Lingyun sect to their faces. He did not even bother to scold those of low levels. Qin Shiyuan did not recognize Jian Fengqi, which could only mean that his level was too low. Seriously speaking, Jian Fengqi and Qin Shiyuan's tit-for-tat confrontation could be considered to be flattering. But Qin Shiyuan obviously did not think so. He took a step forward and the force around him surged. "What sect are you from? Tell me your name." Jian Fengqi touched his chin. "You are not qualified to know my name." Qin Shiyuan choked. He never expected this person to be so arrogant. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "It seems that you didn't hear clearly before. I'll tell you again. I'm the disciple of the Lingyun sect's sect master, Qin Shiyuan. If you insist on opposing me, don't blame me for being rude." "Oh," Jian Fengqi acted as if he suddenly realized something. He raised his chin and said to Chu Liwei, "Did you hear that? There were a total of 197 disciples under the Lingyun sect's sect master, and he was one of them. This identity was very powerful." Although he said that, anyone could hear the sarcasm in his words. Qin Shiyuan's face was gloomy as he sneered. "It seems that you don't care about my identity. I wonder what noble identity you have. Why don't you tell me and let me know which big shot you have offended?" As he said that, his gaze fell on Tu Liwei and he sneered disdainfully. "It just so happens that I also want to know who is so useless that they can only find a rank 3 warrior to come here?" Chu Liwei raised her eyebrows slightly. Was he looking down on her? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 470. Jian Fengqi's expression suddenly became thought-provoking. TSK. If this guy knew that Chu Liwei was brought here by Mu Qinghe, his expression would be very interesting. He looked at Chu Liwei with a smile. "Looks like he doesn't like you." Chu Liwei glanced at him. He probably wouldn't be able to change his personality of wanting to see the world in chaos. Chu Liwei looked at Qin Shiyuan and smiled faintly. "Since I can come, I naturally have the qualifications. Young Master Qin doesn't need to worry about this." Qin Shiyuan suddenly froze and a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. Previously, his attention was all on the man, so he didn't notice that the girl in red beside him was actually extremely beautiful. Zhao Yunji also froze when she saw Chu Liu's appearance. She boasted that she was also a heavenly beauty, and countless young talents had fallen for her. However, compared to this girl, she instantly paled in comparison. She almost instinctively looked at Qin Shiyuan, and as expected, she saw that his expression was a bit strange. His eyes fell on the girl for a long time without looking away. Her heart suddenly seemed to be blocked by something and her expression became ugly. "Cousin, it's better to avoid trouble. How about we just let it go? Let them go first. It won't take long anyway." She pulled Qin Shiyuan's sleeve and bit her lip. There was a hint of grievance in her eyes and she looked very pitiful. Only then did Qin Shiyuan come back to his senses. Seeing her like this, his heart instantly ached. He liked Zhao Yunji for many years, and now that he finally made a name for himself in the Tianling dynasty, he brought her over. But just after crossing heaven's canopy, he made her feel wronged. If he really let it go, what kind of man would he be? He patted her hand and said, "Don't worry. I won't let anyone bully you." After saying that, he suppressed his thoughts and looked at the two people in front of him again. He originally wanted to make fun of them, but he didn't expect that these two people didn't seem to care at all. Forget about the tall man, he should have some strength. But that woman. I didn't know that a mere rank 3 warrior could be so arrogant. Qin Shiyuan mocked. Chu Liwei sighed inwardly. Her cultivation level in the Tianling dynasty was indeed quite eye-catching. "I'm just telling the truth." Her expression was calm as she spoke, neither servile nor overbearing. Qin Shiyuan already had a stomach full of anger. Since he decided to help Zhao Yunji vent her anger, his tone naturally wouldn't be good. "Oh. Since you said so, why don't you tell me your name? When we get to the West Hill, we'll see if you're as powerful as you say you are." Chu Liu's eyes flickered. Country Yaochen Chu Luiyue. She usually didn't find trouble with others, but if trouble came knocking on her door she wouldn't be afraid. Country Yaochen. Cousin, I don't think I've heard this name before. Zhao Yunji said unintentionally as she looked at the woman's alluring face with jealousy. Qin Shiyuan snorted. It's just a small country that can't even reach the apex. Someone who was sent to such a place wouldn't have a high status. He had been worrying too much. Thinking of this, he became even more unscrupulous. I'll give you a chance. As long as you're willing to kowtow and apologize, I'll let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, Jian Fengqi laughed as if he had heard a joke. Huh? What did you say? You want me to kowtow and apologize? Qin Shiyuan, who was interrupted, felt offended again. The laughter was even more ear-piercing. Why? You're not willing? Chu Luiyue finally couldn't help but click her tongue. It had only been a year since he returned. How did the disciples of the Soaring Cloud sect become so arrogant and brainless? Even the sect master of the Soaring Cloud sect didn't dare to say such things to Jian Fengqi. A mere disciple of the sect master actually dared to climb over his head. The ignorant were truly fearless. Jian Fengqi laughed. What a coincidence. I was just about to say that too. But looking at you, it seems like you won't do it. Qin Xian only felt that the man in front of him was really unreasonable. Who did he think he was? How dare he speak to him like that? It seems like this negotiation doesn't need to continue. The strong are respected. Let's see who's the real deal. After saying that, Qin Xian leaped and flew toward Jian Fengqi. Lower stage, 7th stage. He looked like he was in his 20s. It was indeed not bad to be able to reach this stage. But in the eyes of Chu Luiyue and Jian Fengqi, it was just SOSO. Qin Xian crossed his hands in front of him and a yellowish-brown force quickly gathered. Very soon, an enormous origin sphere appeared in front of him. Great Earth Force. With this roar, he raised his hands high above his head and threw the ball out fiercely. The ball flew quickly toward Jian Fengqi. A heavy pressure came head-on. The surrounding space seemed to have become much heavier. Chu Luiyue's shoulders seemed to be pressed down by a small mountain. The pressure of a 7th stage warrior was still somewhat unbearable for her. Jian Fengqi waved his sleeves lightly. That heavy pressure instantly dissipated. As for the ball, it stopped 3 steps away from him. Qin Shiyuan's expression changed. This man's realm was above his. Jian Fengqi raised his arm and opened his palm. Then he clenched his fist lightly. Go! That ball immediately flew in the opposite direction toward Qin Shiyuan. Speed was even faster than when it went. Qin Shiyuan knew something was wrong and immediately retreated. But that ball was faster than him and the distance between them quickly shrank. It was as if there was an invisible hand pushing it forward, and the pressure on it was much stronger than before. Qin Shiyuan felt a tightness in his chest and even his movements became slower. He felt more and more uneasy and immediately pulled out the scimitar at his waist. He slashed horizontally. Gee, bang. That ball suddenly exploded. A violent force spread in all directions. Qin Xian was very close and was unavoidably affected. His chest shook and his body flew out uncontrollably, finally landing heavily on the ground. Puff. He clutched his chest with difficulty and spat out a mouthful of blood. Cousin! Zhao Yunji exclaimed and hurriedly ran over, worriedly helping him up. Cousin, how are you? Qin Shiyuan's mouth was still stained with blood, and his face was much paler than before. The other party's attack actually broke his ribs. Most importantly, he seemed to be injured internally. Zhao Yunji looked at him in this state and felt heartache and anger. She couldn't help but turn around and say angrily, You guys are too much. Soaring Cloud Sect will definitely not let you off for hurting my cousin. She gritted her teeth and looked at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue, right? Don't be too proud. Wait and see when we reach Xiling. Chu Luiyue smiled. I'll be waiting for you. A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 471. From the start to the end, Chu Luiyue felt that she had been very polite. She didn't even say a word that offended him. However, they had obviously included her in their calculations and were planning to take revenge in the future. There was no point in explaining further. Moreover, she couldn't be bothered to say anything to them. The other party threatened to deal with her, so she calmly faced them and followed. However, in Zhao Yunji's eyes, This reaction made Chu Luiyue even more arrogant. Wasn't she just relying on the fact that that man was stronger? However, when they reached the West Hill, this man would definitely not be able to protect her all the time. When the time came, she would definitely take revenge for all the humiliation and grievances she had suffered today. Jian Fengqi stepped onto the teleportation array. When he walked past Qin Shiyuan and Zhao Yunji, his footsteps paused. Qin Shiyuan subconsciously shrank back. Jian Fengqi glanced at him and chuckled. The people of the Lingyun sect are really getting worse with each generation. Qin Shiyuan's face flushed red. He was about to say something, but when he thought of the terrifying aura on this man's body, he swallowed it back. Chu Luiyue followed. Jian Fengqi activated the teleportation array. The two figures quickly disappeared. After confirming that the two had left, Qin Shiyuan struggled to stand up with Zhao Yunji's help. "Cousin, it's all my fault. If I hadn't been in a hurry, these things wouldn't have happened, and they wouldn't have been so heavy-handed to you." Zhao Yunji was about to cry. Qin Shiyuan swallowed the blood in his mouth and stared at the teleportation array. "It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. When I find out that person's identity, I'll definitely teach them a lesson. My Lingyun sect is not so easy to bully." Jian Fengqi and Chu Luiyue didn't care about this small matter. After the two entered the teleportation array, the journey was smooth. Because this teleportation array's level was extremely high, the speed was actually very fast. Even though the northern border and the West Hill were extremely far away, it didn't take too long. However, for Chu Luiyue, every minute and every second near the West Hill was extremely long. Fortunately, because of the darkness, Jian Fengqi could not see her expression. "When we reach the West Hill, I'll send you to Muqinghe first," Jian Fengqi said slowly. Chu Luiyue suddenly came to his senses, and only then did he utter a sound of acknowledgement. After pausing for a moment, she finally couldn't help but ask, "It seems that many Daijing Yuan Meridian cultivators from outside Heaven's Canopy have come this time." This was a little strange. The Tianling dynasty didn't lack such geniuses. Spending so much manpower and resources to search for them outside Heaven's Canopy was truly puzzling. Jian Fengqi chuckled lightly as if he was in disdain. "They're always up to something messy. Who knows what they're up to this time?" Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat and she probingly asked in a low voice, "Them?" He thought that Jian Fengqi wouldn't answer, but he was surprisingly honest this time. "It's the Tianling dynasty's third princess and her husband, Sheng Guanwan and Jiang Yuqing. It's really them." Chu Luiyue was extremely glad that they were in the space tunnel, and Jian Fengqi couldn't see her expression. Hearing that Chu Luiyue was silent, Jian Fengqi explained again. "Oh, the third princess's current status is equivalent to the ruler of the entire Tianling dynasty. When you reach the West Hill, you'll naturally know." He didn't say it earlier because he wasn't very familiar with Chu Luiyue, and she was still in country Yaochen at that time. However, now that she was about to reach the West Hill, even if he didn't say it, she could find out from others. In addition, the two of them had spent some time together and he somewhat admired Chu Luiyue, so he was willing to take the initiative to say a few words. Chu Luiyue's mind raced. She restrained her emotions and asked with slight surprise, "What do you mean? Don't tell me the Tianling dynasty doesn't have one?" "His Majesty is seriously ill and bedridden, so he left most of the matters to the third princess to manage," Jian Fengqi said lightly with a hint of contempt and disdain in his tone. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. "Father is actually still alive." She thought that after she died of rape, Sheng Guanwan and Jiang Yuqing would definitely not let her father off. She didn't expect that after so long, they still hadn't completely taken action. She hesitated for a moment, lowered her voice and asked, "Young Master Jian, you seem to have feelings for the third princess. Contempt? Disdain? Disgust?" Chu Luiyue didn't finish her sentence. Jian Fengqi suddenly laughed. "Have you ever told me that your cleverness can be very annoying sometimes? Especially when it's like..." Jian Fengqi's words came to an abrupt end. Chu Luiyue coughed. "It's all in the past, so let's not talk about it. However, you guessed right. He really does hate Sheng Guanwan." Chu Luiyue blinked, somewhat curious. As far as she knew, Jian Fengqi had a good impression of Sheng Guanwan back then, and even helped Sheng Haiwan find trouble with her. Of course, at that time she didn't realize that Sheng Guanwan did it on purpose. She only thought that Jian Fengqi had lost his mind and had a big quarrel with him. She didn't expect that his attitude towards Shangguan had changed so much. Chu Luiyue was about to ask a few more questions to find out the purpose of Shangguan and Jiang Yuqing's actions, when she suddenly saw a light in front of her. She suddenly clenched her fists. "We're here. Let's go." Jian Fengqi took the lead and walked out. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and followed closely behind. Heaven and earth spun, the darkness receded and bright sunlight poured down. However, this time, Chu Luiyue didn't cover her eyes with her hands. She opened her eyes and stared straight ahead. The majestic Xiling city was like a ferocious beast entrenched in its territory. It stood between heaven and earth. It was majestic and solemn. The sunlight was so glaring that it stung her eyes and tears almost flowed out. Feeling she had finally returned. Digression. There's still one more update later. Everyone go to bed early. It's the same in the morning. Chapter 472. This was the Pingliang Plaza outside Xiling City. The entire plaza was built with rare and expensive lapis lazuli and occupied a large area. There were also several transportation formations in the plaza. The one that Chu Luiyue and the others used was in the center. When the two of them walked out of the space tunnel, the bustling plaza instantly quieted down. Countless pairs of eyes looked over. Every day many people came from all over the place and many people left the Western Mausoleum. Therefore there was an endless stream of people coming and going. But the transportation formation in the center led to Heaven's Canopy at the northern border, so there was usually no one there. Now that two people suddenly appeared, it naturally attracted many people's attention. When they saw the appearance of the two people, the plaza became even quieter. The man was tall and wore a blue brocade robe, with a white jade belt around his waist that easily outlined his smooth outline. Moreover, his eyes were actually blue. At a glance, they were like the purest and most transparent ice spirits. But there was a hint of spring in the corners of his eyes, which made the originally cold eyes ripple a little more. His gaze swept over and many girls blushed. Such outstanding charm was really rare. But the girl standing beside him was not inferior and was even more dazzling. Her figure was exquisite and slender and she wore a red robe. Her black hair was simply tied up, and there were no extra accessories on her body. But her skin was white as snow, her eyebrows were like distant mountains, her nose was delicate, and her lips were red without any makeup. Especially her eyes, which were pure and moving like black jade. When the sunlight fell into her eyes, it was like a brilliant river of stars in the starry night. And there was a faint noble aura between her eyebrows, which added a touch of unattainable charm to her, making people unconsciously revere and submit to her. Such a girl was extremely beautiful and also extremely noble. Although many men were blushing and their hearts were beating fast, they did not dare to go forward. They came from that transportation formation. Could it be that they came from outside Heaven's Canopy? Suddenly, a low questioning voice came from the crowd. This sentence finally broke the silence. Everyone looked at each other. Should be right. Isn't that the transportation formation that leads to the northern border? Recently many people came one after another. That man looks familiar. His blue eyes are filled with love. Isn't that young Master Jian? Which young Master Jian? It's the one from Dragon Teeth Mountain. Have you forgotten? Many people sucked in a cold breath. Jian Fengqi. His whereabouts had always been a mystery. In addition to his noble status, not many people had seen him before. However, in Xiling City he was very famous. Although he couldn't be sure, this man looked very similar to the rumors. It was most likely him. If that's really Jian Fengqi, then the woman next to him is... she was only a rank 3 warrior. She looks like she's only 15 or 16 years old. How can she only be a rank 3 warrior? The crowd fell silent. Their gazes, which were originally filled with amazement and curiosity, suddenly became somewhat subtle. Then they must be from outside Heaven's Canopy. Someone said with certainty. How could a cultivator of this level enter this place? Those who came before were at least peak rank 4. She's pretty, but she's not that strong. She dared to come to Xiling with such strength. She must have some backing, right? I think that face of hers might be her biggest backer. A few girls spoke softly, laughing together. Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows and laughed softly. They're praising your beauty. Chu Luiyue glanced at him lazily. This person's focus was always different from others. Why are you looking at me? I'm handsome and handsome. I won't be jealous of your looks. The smile on Jian Fengqi's lips deepened, and he looked like he was waiting to watch a good show. However, Chu Luiyue's expression was calm, as if she didn't take this matter to heart at all. In fact, she had already expected this. He came from outside Heaven's canopy and was only a rank 3 warrior. Just these two factors alone were enough to bring her a lot of trouble. Moreover, fundamentally speaking, she was fighting alone and had no background or backing. This was even more unthinkable. Xiling City, as the imperial capital of the Tianling dynasty, had the most honorable status and the most abundant resources. The most powerful cultivators. Here strength reigned supreme. No weakling could survive here. Those who could stay in Xiling City were all ruthless characters. So before she came, she had already mentally prepared herself. Now this was not a big deal. She looked at the group of women who were laughing together. Her expression didn't change, but her clear eyes seemed to contain some kind of pressure that made people uneasy. The women's laughter gradually subsided. For some reason they felt guilty and avoided Chu Luiyue's gaze. Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze in satisfaction and walked forward. Hold on. A middle-aged man suddenly walked forward and blocked Chu Luiyue's path. He was tall and muscular, his face dark, and the muscles on his body almost burst his clothes. Chu Luiyue looked up and looked at the man. What's the matter? The middle-aged man sized her up and his voice was like a bell. People from outside have to pay to use our Tianling dynasty's teleportation array. The one you're using is the biggest, so it'll be counted as 10 white crystal coins. In Heaven's canopy, silver and gold were no longer considered hard currencies. Instead, they were replaced by the more precious white crystal coins. One white crystal coin was equivalent to 10,000 taels of gold outside Heaven's canopy. 10 white crystal coins were equivalent to 10,000 taels of gold. This was clearly an exorbitant demand. Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed dangerously and she smiled. Just in time. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 473. It's not impossible for me to pay, but I need to know your identity first, right? Chu Luiyue said calmly. Seeing Chu Luiyue's attitude, the man thought that she was afraid and became even more arrogant. I am Wu Zhao, a disciple of Eight Paths sect. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. Eight Paths sect was just a third-rate sect in Xiling. She didn't expect that one of their people would dare to show off in front of her in Pingliang Square. I'm not asking for your name, I'm asking, why are you taking my money? You don't sound like you're from the government, right? Wu Zhao was stunned for a moment before he understood Chu Luiyue's meaning. He clenched his fists and took a step forward. Chu Luiyue looked even more petite and dainty compared to his tall and sturdy figure. Why, of course it's because my fists are hard. If you don't pay today, don't even think about leaving. It was obvious that they were trying to rob him. The mini teleportation arrays in Pingliang Square all belonged to the royal family of the Tianling dynasty. Under normal circumstances, as long as there were no special circumstances, these teleportation arrays could be used by cultivators. However, maintaining these teleportation arrays would consume a huge amount of money, so they would charge a symbolic maintenance fee. However, even the largest teleportation array she was using now only charged 1 white crystal coin for 10 people. This Wu Zhao asked for 10 white crystals. It was simply an exorbitant price. The most important thing was that although the Black Cavalry was responsible for maintaining the teleportation arrays, they were only responsible for maintaining law and order. The collection of fees was mostly left to the sects in Xiling City. These sects would give people preferential treatment when using the teleportation arrays, and they could even make a profit from it, so it was naturally harmonious. Therefore, although there were many Black Cavalry patrolling around, when they saw Wu Zhao looking for trouble with Chu Luiyue, no one stepped forward. Under normal circumstances, as long as no lives were involved, they wouldn't pay too much attention. Jian Fengqi crossed his arms and watched from the sidelines with a smile. This Wu Zhao was only at the early stage of the 5th stage, so if he took action it wouldn't be a problem. However, it seemed that Chu Luiyue didn't intend to let him intervene. He also wanted to see how Chu Luiyue would deal with these troubles after coming to Xiling City. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. Jian Fengqi could help her once, but he couldn't help her a second time. third time or countless times. Besides, she knew the rules of Xiling. If she couldn't solve this problem, then she would always be to others. What if I say no? Chu Liwei asked slowly. Wu Zhao laughed coldly. Little girl, it seems like this is your first time in West Hill. There are some rules that you don't know yet. To be honest, to pay the money to pay. Otherwise, it would be a pity if such a beautiful face was ruined. I said no, said Chu Liwei resolutely. Was to be. It's fine if you don't want to, as long as you can defeat me. As he spoke, he looked at Chu Liwei condescendingly again. His aura burst out and almost enveloped Chu Liwei. Chu Liwei smiled and nodded. As soon as she finished speaking, the surroundings suddenly became quiet. Wu Zhao frowned. What did you say? Chu Liwei pointed at herself. I said, they. Not to mention that she didn't have any white crystal coins on her. Even if she did, she wouldn't waste them on such a place. Wu Zhao was so angry that he laughed. Good. You're the one who said it. Don't regret it later. Chu Liwei looked around and raised her chin at an empty space next to her. Over there. As he spoke, he walked over without saying a word. Everyone looked at each other. She's not crazy, is she? She really wants to challenge Wu Zhao? Although Wu Zhao can only be regarded as a middle to lower level in 8 Paths sect, he is still at the early stage of the 5th stage. That woman is only a 3rd stage warrior. Isn't she courting death? Who knows what she's thinking? Anyway, she came here with Jian Fengqi. She probably thinks that Wu Zhao won't dare to kill her? Pingliang Square has always had a rule. As long as it's a one-on-one battle, no one else can interfere. Although Jian Fengqi is noble and powerful, he definitely knows that if he intervenes halfway, that woman won't be able to raise her head in the entire Xiling city. I just hope that Wu Zhao doesn't hurt that woman's face. It's been a long time since such a beautiful woman appeared in Xiling city. Chu Liwei didn't care about the discussions around her. She walked to the empty space and stood there looking at Wu Zhao opposite her. Chu Liwei from country Yaochen is here to challenge you. Wu Zhao stretched his shoulders and stared at Chu Liwei. Wu Zhao from 8 Paths sect accepts the challenge. As soon as he finished speaking, he moved and took the lead to rush towards Chu Liwei. Although he was burly, his movements were extremely nimble and his speed was extremely fast. He was like a moving hill. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of Chu Liwei. It was a simple straight punch and it struck out fiercely. In his opinion, such a delicate 3rd stage warrior was not worthy of him using his martial arts skills. One punch was enough. Chu Liu's hair fluttered in the wind. The tyrannical wind from the punch caused her clothes to flutter. The pressure came straight at her face. Seeing that the fist that was almost the size of Chu Liu's face was about to land, many people shook their heads regretfully. Was this woman scared out of her wits? She didn't even know how to dodge. From the looks of it, he seemed to have some confidence, but it turned out that it was just a pretense. At this moment, Chu Liwei took a wrong step, her waist went soft and she bent backward. She narrowly avoided the punch. Then she raised her right hand and grabbed Wu Zhao's wrist. Wu Zhao was shocked. How did the woman manage to dodge it? Before he could figure it out, he suddenly felt a sharp pain coming from his wrist. Chu Liwei had closed her fingers and locked them inwards. Then he viciously twisted his wrist upwards. Almost at the same time, she lifted her leg and kicked Wu Zhao's elbow. Extreme numbness and pain came, causing the strength in Wu Zhao's arm to dissipate instantly. His arm went soft for a moment. He was extremely shocked and furious. His other hand immediately stretched out and grabbed Chu Liwei. However, Chu Liwei used her leg to lock Wu Zhao's arm, and then turned her waist. Her entire body flipped in the air. Wu Zhao's arm was trapped and was almost broken. Then Chu Liwei landed lightly, but Wu Zhao was implicated and fell directly to the ground. Bang! His heavy body landed on the ground with a dull thud. Wu Zhao clenched his teeth and was about to get up to counterattack, but Chu Liwei had already taken advantage of him and stomped on Wu Zhao's chest. That slender and straight long leg looked extremely beautiful, but it contained an astonishing amount of power. With one stomp, Kacha, Wu Zhao's chest actually caved in deeply. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 474. Was this lady's leg made of iron? This thought flashed across Wu Zhao's mind. His face instantly turned pale. When the crowd saw this scene, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. That Chu Liyue had actually broken Wu Zhao's bones with one stomp. From the way he was injured, he had at least 3 broken ribs. Since when did a 3rd-level warrior's physical strength become so strong? One must know that a 5th-level warrior at this age was basically not qualified to collect money in Pingliang Square. The reason why Wu Zhao was an exception was because he was born with divine strength. That body of muscles was not just for show. But just now he had been easily knocked down by a slender woman. Chu Liyue looked down at Wu Zhao with a smile on her face. "You're weaker than I thought." Wu Zhao was furious and raised both his hands to grab Chu Liyue's ankles. Chu Liyue stomped hard again. But the sound of bones breaking was even clearer. An intense pain came from his chest, causing Wu Zhao to break out in cold sweat. He wanted to get up, but his body felt as heavy as a mountain. He was unable to move at all. Before this, he had never thought that he would actually suffer such a huge loss at the hands of such a delicate-looking woman. If it was just a simple physical fight, he would most likely not win. Wu Zhao's mind turned and he immediately decided to use his martial arts. Sensing the force in his body, Chu Liyue raised her eyebrows. If she did not use the power of the water droplet in her dantian, the force in her body would not be able to compete with a 5th-level warrior like Wu Zhao. So she definitely could not give him this chance. A force flew out from Wu Zhao's palm. Chu Liyue moved sideways to avoid it. At the same time, she took a step back. Wu Zhao was delighted. He pushed his palm against the ground and flipped himself up. But when he stood up, he realized that Chu Liyue was no longer in front of him. His heart was suddenly filled with shock. A cold wind came from the back of his head. He did not even think before he pounced forward and rolled on the ground. Tut! A flying dagger as thin as a cicada's wing directly pierced into the position where he had just been standing. 1/3 of the blade had sunk in. Wu Zhao turned around and saw that the flying dagger was still trembling slightly. His eyelids twitched fiercely. The plaza was made of lapis lazuli and was extremely hard. Normal yuan tools would not be able to leave any marks on it. However, this Chu Liyue had only thrown a flying knife and it was easily split open. This was something he knew he couldn't do. It wasn't hard to imagine what would have happened if he had dodged a step slower. Wu Zhao felt a chill run down his spine as he felt some regret in his heart. A person who could take out a throwing knife of this level definitely had a big background. However, if he were to admit defeat now, he would definitely become the laughingstock of the entire Xiling city. Thinking of this, he suddenly pulled out the saber at his waist. An inch longer, an inch stronger. He didn't believe that he couldn't defeat a rank 3 warrior. Just as he began to crazily inject his origin power into the saber, another flying saber flew out from Chu Liyue's hand. The situation was urgent, and Wu Zhao didn't have time to use any martial arts techniques. He was forced to stop and raise his saber to meet the attack. Swish! That flying knife was only the size of a finger and it scraped across Wu Zhao's saber. A series of sparks flew. Following this ear-piercing sound, he was shocked to see that a neat crack had appeared on his saber. Immediately crack. The saber split into 2 halves. Even the origin power in his body suffered a backlash and became chaotic. At this moment, Chu Liyue took a big stride forward. He actually charged directly towards Wu Zhao. Then he lifted his long leg and kicked towards his heart. Wu Zhao's heart trembled. He threw away the saber handle, clenched his fists tightly and crossed them in front of his body to block. Chu Liyue's leg accurately kicked his wrist that was injured just now. Crack! His wrist suddenly showed a strange posture. Wu Zhao groaned and took half a step back. His eyes were burning with rage. Despicable! However, Chu Liyue used the rebounding force to jump up. Wu Zhao was furious. Ignoring his injury, he used his other hand to grab Chu Liyue's calf. Then he fell heavily to the ground. Bang! Chu Liyue's back hit the ground hard. Her body shook and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Wu Zhao's eyes were red. He suddenly dragged Chu Liyue backwards. Chu Liyue's body left a trail of blood on the ground. Just as she was thinking of how to escape, Wu Zhao suddenly stopped. Then he threw Chu Liyue up again and threw her down heavily. On the ground, a cold light flashed. It was the flying knife that Chu Liyue had thrown out earlier. Once it reached his back, it would definitely pierce through his heart. Go to hell, Wu Zhao shouted angrily. However, at this moment, A red shadow flashed past. Wu Zhao suddenly felt a sharp pain on his arm. His hand unconsciously loosened. He turned his head to look. It was a third-grade blood ferret that had bitten off a layer of flesh from his forearm. Blood dripped. Chu Liyue took the opportunity to escape. She rolled on the ground and avoided Wu Zhao's attack. The next moment she waved her wrist and a cold light flew out from her hand. Wu Zhao saw clearly that it was a dagger this time. He quickly dodged. However, just as the dagger was about to graze past his ear, a flying dagger suddenly flew out from the tip of the dagger. Wu Zhao's pupils shrank. He wanted to avoid it immediately. However, he was still a step too late. That flying knife directly pierced through his shoulder. When Chu Liyue got up from the ground, she had already pulled out the flying knife. She had also retrieved the dagger. Wu Zhao covered his shoulder, but blood still flowed out. Chu Liyue rushed forward again. Wu Zhao felt extremely sullen. He wanted to use martial techniques, but Chu Liyue's attacks were fast and hurried, leaving him no time to gather his strength. Every time he prepared to attack, Chu Liyue would make the first move. It was as if she did not care about her life and did not hold back at all. It was as if she was not worried about the consequences if she missed. He lifted his eyes to look at Chu Liyue. Those black jade-like eyes were burning with a crazy fighting spirit. It was as if she would not stop until she died. The injuries on her body were not much better than his. Her entire body was stained with blood, but her fighting spirit seemed to be getting stronger. Wu Zhao's heart skipped a beat, and he felt an inexplicable sense of fear. Although he had cultivated for many years and had a lot of fighting experience, he did not have the will to fight to the death. This Chu Liyue was as if she did not care about her life. In a battle, strength was very important, but at the same time willpower was not to be underestimated. Once the spirit was discouraged, it would be defeated. This was the case for Wu Zhao now. Facing Chu Liyue's continuous approach, he subconsciously took a step back. Suddenly, a strange sound came from behind him. He suddenly turned around. He saw that the blood ferret had a dagger in its mouth. It shook its tail and threw the dagger out. Chu Liyue rushed forward and grabbed the dagger. Wu Zhao had just reacted when he suddenly felt a cold tingling sensation coming from the back of his neck. Do you want to admit defeat or do you want to continue? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience came from love. Chapter 475. Admit defeat. Wu Zhao couldn't say that no matter what. Continue. The sharp dagger on his neck was about to pierce his neck. He didn't doubt that as long as Chu Liyue wanted to, he could cut him in half right now. Countless pairs of eyes looked over, making him extremely embarrassed. He couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. Chu Liyue flicked the dagger lightly, making a crisp sound. Wu Zhao's body almost trembled. You win. He closed his eyes and said as if he had accepted his fate. After he said that, the surroundings were dead silent. Wu Zhao actually admitted defeat. He, a beginner stage 5 warrior, actually lost to a stage 3 warrior. If this news were to spread, it would definitely cause a huge commotion in Xiling City. Am I too ignorant and inexperienced? When did the stage 3 warriors outside Heaven's Canopy become so strong? Someone in the crowd muttered softly. Or is Wu Zhao's stage 5 warrior strength just fake? Wu Zhao's face turned red and white. His veins were bulging and he wanted to curse out loud. His strength was fake. If they have the ability, then come and try. This Chu Liyue, damn it, she's not a normal person at all. It wasn't like he hadn't fought with stage 3 warriors before. Who was like her? Other things aside, just her physical strength and speed were not inferior to his at all. Where did such a freak come from? Admit defeat? Chu Liyue curled her lips in satisfaction. Okay, then take 10 white crystal coins. Wu Zhao was stunned. What did you say? Chu Liyue explained with a smile. I said since you chose to admit defeat, then give me 10 white crystal coins and we'll forget about this matter. Wu Zhao didn't react for a while. Why should I give you so much money? I already said that you won. What else do you want? They didn't bet 10 white crystal coins. Whoever loses gets to take it. Chu Liyue blinked. So you don't want to give it to me? In your dreams. Wu Zhao shouted furiously. He had been in Xiling City for so many years, but he had never seen anyone who not only refused to pay but also asked for money. Chu Liyue, right? I'm warning you, this isn't your lousy third-rate country. You can do whatever you want here. It's best if you stop while you're ahead. Otherwise, Chu Luiyue impatiently pushed the dagger forward. The sharp tip of the dagger instantly pierced his flesh. Warm and sweet blood slowly flowed out from the dagger. Wu Zhao's voice stopped abruptly. Admit defeat and take 10 white crystal coins. Let's continue then. Chu Luiyue kindly explained. I'll ask you again, which one do you choose? Wu Zhao was so angry that smoke was almost coming out of his head. How dare you? It seems that you think your life is not worth 10 white crystal coins? Chu Luiyue shook his head regretfully. What a pity. As he spoke, he flicked his wrist and was about to make a move. I'll give. Wu Zhao finally couldn't hold back and shouted. He had a premonition in his heart. This Chu Luiyue really dared to kill him. He stiffened his body, took out 10 white crystal coins from his Qingkuan bag, and handed them to Chu Luiyue. Take it. Chu Luiyue gave Dumpling a look. Dumpling immediately went forward, hugged the ball of white crystal coins and flew towards Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue glanced at it from the corner of his eyes. After confirming that it was indeed 10 white crystal coins, he finally retreated. Sensing that the dagger was finally far away, Wu Zhao finally heaved a sigh of relief. He couldn't help but look back at Chu Luiyue resentfully and angrily. He raised his finger and pointed at Chu Luiyue. Wu Zhao will remember what happened today. You'd better pray that you don't meet me again. Chu Luiyue smiled and shook the white crystal coins in his hand. You're most welcome. Wu Zhao's face was livid, but he still turned and left in the end. Even after his figure disappeared, the square was still silent. The outcome of the matter was completely different from what they had expected. It was no wonder that they were so shocked. Chu Luiyue kept the 10 white crystal coins, walked to Jian Fengqi and patted his Qingkuan bag. First bucket of gold. Although this amount of money was nothing to her, it was better to have more. With these, her days in Xiling City should be a little easier. Jian Fengqi's mouth twitched. First bucket of gold. How could this girl have the nerve to say that? He thought that his skin was already thick enough, but he didn't expect Chu Luiyue to be even thicker. She was probably the first person to steal money from the guards of the teleportation portal. No matter what, after this battle, Chu Luiyue's name would definitely spread quickly in Xiling City. You really dare to kill that Wu Zhao? Jian Fengqi asked. No matter what, he is still a disciple of a sect. Chu Luiyue glanced at him and suddenly revealed a bright smile. Don't I have young Master Jian's protection? Jian Fengqi? When did this young master say? Jian Fengqi was about to refute when he saw the teasing look in Chu Luiyue's eyes and suddenly understood. That's right. He was the one who brought Chu Luiyue here. Didn't that mean that Chu Luiyue was on his side? The people of Eight Paths sect didn't have the guts to openly oppose him. Even if Chu Luiyue really killed Wu Zhao today, they wouldn't dare to do anything in private. What's more, so many people saw clearly that Chu Luiyue did win this battle with his own ability. If you agree to bet, you must accept defeat. No wonder she was so confident. Jian Fengqi narrowed his eyes. You really know how to take advantage of the situation. You haven't even entered the Western Tomb and you've already offended 2 sections. I don't know if I should say you're brave or... The first one has nothing to do with me. Don't worry, they'll definitely count you in. So now we're even. Jian Fengqi suddenly felt that something was wrong. This girl really didn't want to suffer any losses. Since this matter has been resolved, we should go. Jian Fengqi raised his chin. Chu Luiyue readily agreed. The two left Pingliang Square just like that, leaving behind countless gazes. After walking for some distance, Jian Fengqi turned his head and looked at Chu Luiyue several times and couldn't help but ask curiously. Although you have some strength, you've offended so many people. Are you really not afraid at all? Chu Luiyue looked at the towering city gate in front of her and smiled. What do I have to be afraid of? The people she wanted to deal with were the noblest existences in Western Tomb City. What were these small shrimps to her? They were just appetizers. When she returned this time, she had already made up her mind to completely overturn the entire Western Tomb. Seeing the surging waves in Chu Luiyue's eyes, Jian Fengqi's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He didn't know why, but he felt that Chu Luiyue's aura was somewhat strange, as if it contained killing intent. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows and smiled, then walked toward the city gate. The West Hill must be very exciting. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience came from Love Network. Chapter 476. The city gates of Xiling were made of gilded copper. They were thick and tall, and it was rumored that even a level 8 warrior could barely leave a shallow mark on them. It was impossible to break them open. The city walls were made of grayish-green rocks and they were extremely hard. Thousands of years of wind and frost had added a touch of vicissitudes to this ancient and sacred imperial capital. There were a total of 3 entrances to the city gates. The one in the middle was the largest and only the noblest people of the Tianling dynasty could pass through it. Under normal circumstances, this entrance was tightly locked. A golden plaque hung on it with the words Xiling written on it. It was majestic, solemn and majestic. The side entrances on both sides were for ordinary people to enter and exit. Although they were smaller than the entrance in the middle, each entrance could still accommodate hundreds of people entering and exiting at the same time. There were hundreds of black cavalry guards near each entrance. Anyone who entered or exited Xiling had to go through a strict examination. Even so, there were still many people coming and going and it was very lively. As the imperial capital of the Tianling dynasty, countless cultivators came here every day as if they were on a pilgrimage. Chu Luiyue and Jian Fengqi walked forward with the crowd. However, probably because the two of them were too beautiful and many people had seen the commotion in Pingliang Square, there seemed to be a transparent barrier around the two of them, isolating them from the rest. When they walked to the entrance, a guard standing in front looked up and saw Jian Fengqi. He immediately said respectfully, "I've seen." Jian Fengqi waved his hand and threw the token in his hand over. "I'm bringing someone." The guard could tell that Jian Fengqi did not want to be ostentatious and couldn't help but be amazed. In the entire Xiling, this lord was definitely the one who liked to be lively. It was rare for him to be so low-key this time. His gaze fell on Chu Luiyue and a trace of amazement flashed across his eyes. "This is..." Chu Luiyue handed the token over. "Country Yaochen Chu Luiyue." So he came from outside Heaven's Canopy and was only a level 3 warrior? However, since he could come with Jian Fengqi, he had to give him face. He examined Chu Luiyue's token and was shocked. This was clearly Vice Admiral Mu's token. It seemed that this girl's background was more complicated than he imagined. He respectfully returned the token to the two and looked at Chu Luiyue. "You came at the right time. The Wanjing competition will begin tomorrow. As long as they registered at Xinli Garden, they could officially participate in the competition tomorrow." Chu Luiyue was stunned. Wanjing competition? But she had never heard of it. Upon seeing Chu Luiyue's expression, the person thought that she didn't know where Xinli Garden was. "Do you need someone to take you there?" Chu Luiyue subconsciously. I'll ask young Master Jian for help. There's no need to trouble yourself." Jian Fengqi raised his brows. This girl seemed to be quite handy with him. The guard was shocked. He carefully glanced at Jian Fengqi and was slightly relieved when he saw that he wasn't angry. "That's right. I will naturally bring her there." Jian Fengqi gestured at Chu Luiyue. "Follow this young master." Chu Luiyue smiled faintly and followed him. Xin Garden was a famous royal garden in Xiling City. It had been there since the Taizu era. She used to like to go there when she was free. She didn't expect that the first place she wanted to go was there. Jian Fengqi walked in front, waving a green jade fan in his hand. "Xin Garden is a good place. You can go in and take a look later." In the past, not everyone could enter that place. Chu Luiyue could tell that there was a hidden meaning in his words. She pretended to be curious and took the opportunity to ask, "In the past?" "Forget about the garden in the past. There's no point in talking to you about it. Anyway, the scenery is good." Chu Luiyue tactfully changed the topic. "What's the Wanjing competition about? Vice Admiral Mu didn't mention it to me before." Jian Fengqi paused. He put away his green jade fan and rested it on his chin. "It's just some boring competition. You'll know when you go there tomorrow." Anyway, in his eyes, this was just what Shangguan Wan and the others said. They inexplicably held this Wanjing competition in the name of grooming geniuses into powerhouses. But who knew what they were up to? Seeing that Jian Fengqi didn't think much of it, Chu Luiyue nodded lightly and didn't ask any more questions. The two of them walked forward and soon arrived at Xin Garden. However, when they arrived at the entrance of Xin Garden, Chu Luiyue acutely sensed that there were several powerhouses hidden here. Several scrutinizing gazes swept over her. Chu Luiyue pretended not to notice and obediently followed behind Jian Fengqi. Two servants stood in front of Xian Garden's entrance. Chu Luiyue quickly scanned them. As expected, they were two unfamiliar faces. However, the two clearly recognized Jian Fengqi. Their originally cold and stern faces immediately revealed eager smiles. "Greetings, young Master Jian." Jian Fengqi waved his green jade fan impatiently. "How does one register for the Wanjing competition?" The two's gazes fell on Chu Luiyue. Needless to say, this was the person who wanted to register. However, Jian Fengqi didn't seem to be on the list of people to bring, right? However, they didn't dare to ask and respectfully said, "Please come in. Please come in. The registration area is at Xiaofu Garden. There will naturally be someone to help you there." Jian Fengqi winked at Chu Luiyue and walked in first. Chu Luiyue's expression didn't change as she followed behind him and stepped through the door. A strong fragrance assailed her nostrils. It was mixed with a faint bitterness, but it was refreshing. Xianxia Garden occupied a large area and planted a large number of herbs. That was why the entire garden was filled with this fragrance. Herbs that were rarely seen outside could be found everywhere here. Chu Luiyue's gaze swept lightly across the surrounding grass and trees. She sighed softly in her heart. Her mother had died and her subordinates were homeless. However, these herbs had been preserved in perfect condition. Oh, she had almost forgotten. Shangguanwan was also a celestial physician. She had personally cultivated these things back then, but in the end Shangguanwan had benefited from all of them. At this thought, Chu Luiyue's gaze turned cold. However, it disappeared in an instant and her expression quickly returned to normal. Because there was something that couldn't be ignored. There were even more hidden cultivators in Xianxia Garden. Along the way she felt like she had been checked over and over again. Jian Fengqi obviously noticed this as well. His expression turned cold. After walking through the front courtyard and bypassing the 7-star bridge, the two finally arrived at Xiaofu Garden. A man who looked to be about 30 years old was sitting quietly behind a table. Hearing footsteps, the man looked up. When he saw Jian Fengqi, he smiled. "I was wondering who it was. So it's you." Jian Fengqi frowned. "Lu Xingyi? Why are you here?" "Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. The third princess sent me here. Where else would I be if not here?" As Lu Xingyi spoke, he looked at Chu Luiyue with a playful expression. "Is this the person you brought with you?" A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 477. A Stage 3 Warrior. Jian Fengqi, can't you find a more outstanding cultivator? Before this, the lowest registration was at the peak of Stage 4. I think you guys should just not participate in this Wanjing competition. Lu Xingyi said sarcastically. Chu Luiyue felt disgusted. Lu Xingyi was one of Shangguanwan's confidants. He was sinister and cunning. She disliked this person very much back then, but Shangguanwan always used the reason that he had saved her life before to speak up for him, so she turned a blind eye to it. Moreover, Jian Fengqi had a bad relationship with him. Lu Xingyi once had a girl he liked very much, but that girl was infatuated with Jian Fengqi. After being rejected by Jian Fengqi, she shaved her head and became a nun. Because of this, Lu Xingyi had always hated Jian Fengqi. In fact, this matter didn't have much to do with Jian Fengqi. Although he was a playboy and often had affairs with other women, he had always done it willingly and was very gentlemanly. He didn't like that girl, so he directly rejected her. Who knew that things would turn out like this in the end? Lu Xingyi made things difficult for him. At first, Jian Fengqi didn't argue with him, but later on he realized that Lu Xingyi wouldn't stop and became anxious. The two of them fell out completely. When enemies met, their eyes would naturally turn red. Do you think it's up to you to decide whether to participate or not? I've already brought her here. You know what to do. Jian Fengqi sneered. Lu Xingyi was annoyed when he saw his face. However, there were many people watching in the dark. Of course, he couldn't do something so deceptive in public. Origin, name, age. He flipped open a booklet and picked up a pen. Chu Luiyue said, Country Yaochen Chu Luiyue 14. Lu Xingyi's pen paused and he looked up at her again. He was quite young. Warrior rank. 3rd rank. Lu Xingyi didn't seem to mind and sneered. Chu Luiyue pretended not to hear anything. That's enough. Take this with you and go to Xuanji Square tomorrow morning to participate in the Wanjing competition." As he spoke, Lu Xingyi handed over a red string bracelet with a longan-sized bronze bead strung on it. "This represents your identity. If you lose it, it will automatically be considered as a forfeit." Chu Luiyue took the bracelet. "Thank you, Lord Lu." Something flashed across Lu Xingyi's eyes as he stared at Chu Luiyue and laughed mysteriously. "You're quite sensible." Although she came with Jian Fengqi, she was indeed a stunning beauty. "Maybe I can find a chance to." Chu Luiyue pretended not to see the intention in his eyes. Jian Fengqi grabbed her arm. "Let's go. This place is foul. I can't stay here a moment longer." Chu Luiyue staggered, but she didn't feel dissatisfied with Jian Fengqi. Instead, she curved her lips and said in an inaudible voice, "Thank you." Jian Fengqi glanced at her in annoyance. Did this girl know what kind of person Lu Xingyi was? Be careful of this person in the future. Chu Luiyue rarely felt that Jian Fengqi was so pleasing to the eye. Her smile deepened. "I know." Jian Fengqi felt inexplicably weak from her smile. He let go of her arm and walked forward quickly. Chu Luiyue said slowly from behind, "Young Master Jian, don't walk so fast. You still have to send me off." Jian Fengqi suddenly stopped. Did he owe Chu Luiyue and Mu Qinghe in his previous life? "Hurry up and go." The two figures gradually disappeared into the distance. Lu Xingyi's expression quickly changed and became much more respectful. "Seniors, what do you think of this Chu Luiyue?" Shaofu Garden was silent. Only the sound of the wind rustling the leaves could be heard. After a moment, a hoarse voice sounded. "Daijing Yuan Meridian. Medium." Lu Xingyi was shocked. Chu Luiyue, who was only a stage 3 warrior, had such a good Yuan Meridian? But if he had such talent, how could he only reach stage 3 at the age of 14? This matter didn't make sense. But even if he had the guts, he wouldn't dare to question this judgment. He flipped open the book and added a small medium below Chu Luiyue's name. Chu Luiyue and Jian Fengqi arrived at the Mu residence. Seeing the familiar door, Chu Luiyue was a little dazed for a moment. As the Deputy General of the Black Cavalry, Mu Qinghe had a high position and was given a residence early on. He had always been diligent and thrifty, so he didn't care much about such things. Back then, Chu Luiyue was the one who helped him pick this courtyard. Even the decorations were mostly done according to her preferences. He didn't expect that with the passage of time he was still living here safely. The corners of Chu Luiyue's mouth moved slightly. He wanted to laugh, but he couldn't. This scene was too ironic. Outside the Mu residence, there were 2 soldiers in black armor guarding the entrance. Seeing Jian Fengqi, one of them immediately stepped forward. "Welcome, young Master Jian." Jian Fengqi asked. "Where's your master?" "I personally brought him back. Why isn't he coming out?" The soldier said respectfully. "Young Master Jian, the Deputy General is not in the residence right now. But before he left, he said that if you bring someone here, you can go in directly." "Not here. Where did he go?" Jian Fengqi asked casually. The 2 soldiers looked at each other awkwardly. "This subordinate doesn't know." Jian Fengqi snorted. Although Xiling City was big, there were only a few places Mu Qinghe would go. He waved the green jade fan in his hand. "I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. This Miss Chu was personally invited by your Deputy General. You must serve her well, understand?" The 2 soldiers glanced at Chu Luiyue, but their expressions were very calm. "Yes." Chu Luiyue thought self-deprecatingly. These soldiers were indeed personally trained by Mu Qinghe. Faced with her appearance and cultivation level, they didn't show the same expression as the others. They looked at her as if she was a piece of wood. Mu Qinghe always led soldiers with strict military discipline. This was also why he could win every battle. Jian Fengqi turned around and winked at Chu Luiyue. "Go by yourself." Chu Luiyue thanked him again. After Jian Fengqi really left, she stepped over the threshold. One of the soldiers quickly walked up to them. "Miss Chu, please follow me." There were no servants or maids in the Mu residence. Those who served here were all soldiers of the Black Cavalry. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly and followed. She had just taken 2 steps when she suddenly heard a strange movement beside her. Chu Luiyue seemed to have sensed something and turned her head to look. A green shadow quickly flew towards her. It was Hong Yao. Chu Luiyue smiled. "Hong Yao, long time no see. Before she finished speaking, the smile on her face suddenly froze. There was a trace of scarlet blood under Hong Yao's wings. Digression. Today's update is complete. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Aiwa. Chapter 478. However, the red demon quickly landed on Chu Liyue's shoulder and retracted its wings. The soldier leading the way did not notice this abnormality. The other shoulder sank slightly. Dumpling had also come out. She crossed her arms and glared at the red demon. Just as Chu Liyue thought that she was going to cause trouble for the red demon again, Dumpling curled its tail and obediently squatted on her shoulder. Chu Liyue heaved a sigh of relief. It was quite rare that these two did not fight when they met. Chu Liyue looked at the soldier in front of her and saw that he was looking at her with a shocked expression. "Is there something on my face?" Chu Liyue asked. No. The soldier suddenly came back to his senses and quickly lowered his head. However, the waves in his heart did not calm down for a long time. The red demon was actually so intimate with this Miss Chu. One had to know that other than Vice Admiral Mu, no one else could even touch it. He really did not know how this Miss Chu did it. However, the soldiers who could enter the Mu clan were all well trained. Although he was very shocked and puzzled by this matter, his expression quickly returned to normal. "Miss Chu, this way please." Chu Liyue followed him to a small courtyard behind the Mu clan. The deputy general said that since you're here, you can stay in Wind Lotus Courtyard for the time being. This place has been cleaned up inside and out. You can rest at ease. During this period of time, I will be in charge of all the affairs of Miss Chu. Chu Liyue nodded slightly and asked with a smile, "Thank you. Thank you. How should I address you?" "I'm Duan Ziyu, a lieutenant of the Black Cavalry." Duan Ziyu straightened his shoulders and said with full of energy, "Thank you, Lieutenant Duan. Miss Chu, you're welcome." Chu Liyue pointed inside. "Then I'll go in first?" Duan Ziyu said, "Please." Chu Liyue walked towards Wind Lotus Courtyard. She didn't need to turn around to know that Duan Ziyu was standing guard at the entrance of the courtyard. In fact, she could sense that Duan Ziyu was not the only one. There were many people hiding in all directions of Wind Lotus Garden. Whether it was protection or surveillance, Chu Liyue didn't care. Since they were already in West Hill, there were still many things to do. She walked into the room and closed the doors and windows. As soon as she sat down, she went to see Hong Yao. Hong Yao obediently let her hold it. Chu Liyue opened his wings and took a look. Sure enough, there was a shallow wound. The bloodstains had dried up and the wound had just scabbed over. It looked like a recent injury, but fortunately it was not fatal. But the point was that Red Demon was a high-level demon beast, and everyone knew that it was Mu Qinghe's demon beast. Who would be so bold to hurt it? Who? Chu Liyue asked briefly with a frown. Hong Yao just hugged her hand and pressed her head tightly against her palm. In her clear and beautiful ruby-like eyes, there was a trace of rare sadness and grief. A drop of hot tear fell silently from his eyes. Chu Liyue felt a pain in her heart. She had always loved Hong Yao and couldn't bear to see it sad like this. "What's wrong? Who bullied you?" Chu Liyue gently wiped its tears and asked softly. In West Hill, Hong Yao could be called a tyrant. There were not many people who could bully it. Hong Yao just shook its head. Chu Liyue thought for a moment. If it was injured in a normal fight, it would definitely not react like this. It seemed that it was more related to Mu Qinghe. "Where did your master go?" Chu Liyue asked. Hong Yao didn't move and refused to say anything. Chu Liyue had no choice but to touch its head gently. Mu Qinghe's situation didn't look too good. Hong Yao soon fell asleep in her hands. Chu Liyue carefully put it down. Dumpling, on the other hand, was squatting obediently at the side. Chu Liyue felt a little relieved. She glanced at the bracelet on her wrist, hesitated for a moment and took it off. She sat cross-legged and placed her hands on her knees. She closed her eyes and began to cultivate. When she broke through to become a Stage 3 warrior last time, everything happened too suddenly. She didn't have time to examine her situation properly. Now she could finally calm down. In her dantian on the water droplet, 3 lines were floating quietly. In the heavenly square cauldron, the transparent hellfire was constantly burning. The soul trapped in it was now on the verge of death. Chu Liyue knew that it would still take some time to refine it, so she didn't care too much. Purple gold Bodhi leaf. The legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly spoke. Chu Liyue was taken aback. What? If you want to help me recover my physical body, you need the purple gold Bodhi leaf. There was such a thing in the garden you went to today. The legendary three-eyed eagle explained. Chu Liyue frowned slightly. Xinli garden? There's no such thing there. There is. My senses can't be wrong. No, Chu Liyue instinctively wanted to deny it. She was the one who took care of most of the herbs in Xinli garden. Of course she knew what was inside. At least when she was around, there was definitely no purple gold Bodhi leaf in the garden. Because to the entire Tianling dynasty, it was only a herb that existed in legends. Moreover, purple gold Bodhi leaf was an extremely precious herb. Legend had it that a leaf's fragrance could spread for hundreds of miles. If it really existed in Xinli garden, why didn't she feel it at all? Did you make a mistake? Chu Liyue couldn't help but ask. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice was a little cold. Purple gold Bodhi leaf is the sacred tree of the legendary three-eyed eagle clan. How could I be wrong? Chu Liyue was speechless. There was no need for the legendary three-eyed eagle to lie to her. Then could it be that someone put it there after she died? But did Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing have the ability to get the purple gold Bodhi leaf? Then do you know where the purple gold Bodhi leaf is? I know the approximate location. But there are many obstacles outside. Moreover, the 1,000-year-old purple gold Bodhi leaf is sentient. Not only does it have amazing defensive power, but it is also very good at hiding. Even if ordinary people see it with their own eyes, they won't be able to recognize it, let alone get it. With your current ability, it's basically a pipe dream. Chu Liyue, then what's the point of telling me this? She said faintly. So you told me this just to humiliate me? Of course not. I don't have the leisure to do that. Can't you talk properly? Ordinary people can't even get close to the purple gold Bodhi leaf, let alone get it. But if you have my aura on you, this won't be a problem. Chu Liyue frowned slightly. You're in my dantian. As long as you can't hide, my body will be tainted with your aura. Isn't that enough? Of course not. The legendary three-eyed eagle paused for a moment before saying, my physical body is now destroyed and only my spirit is left. It has nothing to do with you. Although my aura can overflow from your body, it has nothing to do with your own aura. Chu Liyue asked, then what should I do? The legendary three-eyed eagle didn't speak for a long time. Just when Chu Liyue thought that it wasn't going to speak, its voice finally sounded, I recognize you as my master, so I'll take the purple gold Bodhi leaf. You can read it from the Love Network for a better reading experience. Chapter 479. Chu Liyue took a while to react. The legendary three-eyed eagle actually took the initiative to speak and wanted to recognize her as its master. It was simply unbelievable. Even ordinary magical beasts were unwilling to recognize humans as their masters, let alone a supreme divine beast like the legendary three-eyed eagle. Even if a pie fell from the sky, it wouldn't fall like this. Chu Liyue was a little stunned by this sudden sentence. You're serious? If you dare to say that you're not willing, you're dead. The legendary three-eyed eagle said fiercely. Its voice was so cold that it could freeze 3,000 miles. If not for the sake of recovering its physical body, how could it be willing to recognize a human as its master? In the entire history of the legendary three-eyed eagle clan, there was almost no such thing. It felt more uncomfortable than anyone else and more unwilling than anyone else. But this was the only way. It had been burned in the heavenly square cauldron for thousands of years. The endless torment of the long nights had caused it unbearable pain. Its mind and will had long been destroyed countless times. If not for its last bit of obsession, it would have long been unable to hold on and died in the endless flames. Over time, this had already become its last pillar of support. So, it must find a way to recover its physical body and return to its previous peak. Chu Liyue coughed. This kind of thing, I think everyone would wish for it, right? But I already have dumpling. I'm afraid this will be a little difficult. As she spoke, she opened her eyes. As expected, she saw Dumpling staring fiercely at her lower abdomen. Its entire body was filled with surging murderous intent. It looked like if Chu Liyue agreed, it would immediately fight. The legendary three-eyed eagle sneered with undisguised pride. I am a divine beast. Naturally, I am not restricted by this rule. The saying that a person could only have one magical beast at a time was a rule for ordinary magical beasts. But to a divine beast this was not a problem at all. Chu Luiyue opened her eyes slightly. This was the first time she had heard of such a thing. So divine beasts were really so capable? Dumpling bared its teeth and let out a threatening roar. Its two claws were clenched into fists. It wanted to fight this fellow to the death. Chu Luiyue was caught in a dilemma. On one hand she didn't want Dumpling to be unhappy, but on the other hand she really did want to help the legendary three-eyed eagle recover its physical body. After hesitating for a moment she asked, there should be other ways, right? The legendary three-eyed eagle sneered. Of course there is. As long as your strength reaches the 8th rank the success rate will greatly increase. Chu Luiyue, she was only a rank 3 warrior now. Who knew how long it would take for her to break through to rank 8? Chu Luiyue looked at Dumpling. Dumpling, let me ask you again seriously. What is your stance on this matter? If he agreed he would nod. If he didn't he would shake his head. Whatever you say that's what it is, okay? Dumpling was stunned and looked at her blankly. It didn't expect that Chu Luiyue would let it make a decision. It was indeed jealous. Whenever it thought that Chu Luiyue would no longer belong to it alone, it felt very uncomfortable. It had found her with great difficulty. But when she asked it so sincerely and seriously, it suddenly didn't know what to do. In this world if someone could get a divine beast how ecstatic would they be? They probably wouldn't even blink if they were asked to kill their own magical beast with their own hands. But she said that whatever it said was what it said was. In this world there would be no one else like her. Dumpling's eyes turned sour. It quickly turned around and wiped its eyes with its tail. The legendary three-eyed eagle said coldly. Let it in. I will talk to it personally. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. After she said those words the legendary three-eyed eagle was actually angry. She had thought that the prideful three-eyed eagle clan would fly into a rage out of humiliation after being compared to a third-grade magical beast, and even be judged by the third-grade magical beast whether or not it could recognize a human as its master. Dumpling wiped its tears and looked deeply at Chu Luiyue before entering her dantian. The two magical beasts looked at each other across the heavenly square cauldron. Chu Luiyue knew that magical beasts had their ways of communicating. Unfortunately, she didn't know what they were talking about, so she waited quietly. The legendary three-eyed eagle looked at Dumpling with a trace of ridicule in its eyes. It used telepathy to send a message. Normal magical beasts can't withstand the pressure of a divine beast. Even if they can recognize the same master, they will quickly explode and die. However, you don't have this concern at all. What's there to object? Dumpling stared at it and didn't say anything. Don't you know that the bloodline of the divine beast in my body is also beneficial to you? Do you really want to be a third-grade blood ferret for the rest of your life? Are you willing? Dumpling clenched its claws and trembled slightly. Even if you are willing, with her potential she will definitely reach the top of this continent in the future. When that time comes, what can you do to help her? The last sentence of the legendary three-eyed eagle was the last straw that broke the camel's back. In Tuanzi's glass-like eyes, there seemed to be stars shining brightly for a moment. It finally said, remember, I am number 1. Don't even think about fighting for it. The legendary three-eyed eagle seemed to laugh. You are finally willing to admit it? In this world, anyone who could call themselves that. Dumpling didn't pay any more attention to it. It turned and left quickly. The next moment, it appeared in front of Chu Luiyue again. How was your conversation? Chu Luiyue asked. Dumpling's expression had returned to its usual expression. It frowned and looked like it was wronged. If you don't like it, we won't. Dumpling suddenly shook its head. It rushed over and squatted on her shoulder, rubbing its face against hers. Then he nodded his head gently. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Dumpling, you agree? Dumpling buried its head in its tail and didn't move. However, its meaning couldn't be more obvious. It actually agreed. Chu Luiyue's heart was filled with doubts. According to her understanding of Dumpling, it shouldn't be too willing. She really didn't know what the two of them were talking about just now. She was happy and distressed. She pinched Dumpling's ear. The legendary three-eyed eagle said, let's begin. Chu Luiyue grunted. Whoosh. The sound of wings flapping suddenly came. Chu Luiyue looked up. A black phantom of the legendary three-eyed eagle appeared in front of her. I have already sealed the surroundings. No one will notice. The legendary three-eyed eagle didn't open its mouth, but its voice fell clearly into Chu Liyue's ears. Chu Liyue nodded. Now cut open your palm and pledge your blood to me. Chu Liyue used a dagger to gently cut her palm. Blood gushed out. Buzz. A slowly rotating silver disc suddenly appeared in front of her. She sensed a divine and dignified aura emanating from it. She was slightly shocked. This seemed to be the aura of the heavenly Tao. The legendary three-eyed eagle chanted in a low voice. The heavenly Tao is above. I swear on the bloodline of the legendary three-eyed eagle clan. Chu Liyue is my master. From now on I'll be loyal and do my best, and I'll never betray you. Chapter 480. A strange pattern gradually appeared on the disc. Suddenly Chu Liyue felt that there was a vast and subtle aura in her body. That was the legendary three-eyed eagle. Immediately after, the surrounding heaven and earth energy suddenly started to surge towards her silently. The speed of devouring was actually several times faster than when she was cultivating. Chu Liyue was slightly shocked, but she still subconsciously absorbed the energy and transformed it into her own body. After some time the commotion finally stopped. The disc suddenly transformed into a stream of light and brought the black legendary three-eyed eagle phantom into Chu Liyue's body. Chu Liyue clearly felt that something was different. There was another wisp of Heaven Dao's power in her body. She slowly lowered her head and looked at her hands. In this short period of time her strength had increased by a lot. It was almost to the point of touching the barrier of a rank 4 warrior. If an ordinary rank 3 warrior contracted a divine beast and accepted the Heaven Dao's power, they would at least break through to the peak of rank 4 or even rank 5. You actually didn't even cross the threshold of a rank 4 warrior. The legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly said. Chu Liyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she shrugged. She originally thought that she had advanced quite a bit, but she didn't expect that. But her body did have this problem and she was basically used to it. This is good too. Although relying on external forces to break through quickly can increase one's realm quickly, it might not be a good thing. She now hoped that she could spar with someone to strengthen her foundation. The Wanzheng competition was an excellent opportunity. The next morning, Chu Liyue simply packed up and went out. Duanziyu was waiting outside the courtyard. Seeing him, Chu Liyue then remembered that she was busy with the legendary three-eyed eagle yesterday and actually forgot about Mu Qinghe. Is Vice Admiral Mu back? She asked. Duanziyu said respectfully. Lieutenant General came back last night and left an hour ago. Left? What's so urgent? Chu Liyue was a little surprised. Why was Mu Qinghe so busy? The injuries on his body shouldn't have fully recovered yet, right? I don't know about that. The Deputy General asked me to bring you to the Wanzheng competition. Chu Liyue smiled. Then I'll have to trouble you, Lieutenant Duan. When he woke up in the morning, Hong Yao had already left. She must have gone to find Mu Qinghe. Actually, she wanted to see him, but now was not the time. He could only wait. The next time Vice Admiral Mu comes back, please inform me, Lieutenant Duan. I have something to discuss with Vice Admiral Mu. Because of Hong Yao, Duanziyu was more polite to Chu Liyue. Don't worry, Miss Chu. With that, the two of them headed to the Xuanji Square together. On the main street, people were already coming and going. It was very lively. Most of them were heading in the same direction. Chu Liyue and Duanziyu followed the crowd forward. Although Duanziyu was wearing black armor, because the black cavalry was everywhere in Xiling, he didn't attract much attention. Instead, it was Chu Liyue who attracted a lot of attention. No matter where she went, her alluring face would become the most eye-catching existence. Who is that girl? Why haven't I seen her in Xiling City before? With such beauty, she definitely isn't a nobody. She must have come from outside Heaven's Canopy to participate in the Wanzheng competition? I recognize her. She's the girl who defeated Wu Zhao yesterday. Seems like I got it right. Chu Liyue. It was unknown who suddenly said this, but it caused quite a commotion in the crowd. As a beginner stage 5 warrior, Wu Zhao was defeated by a stage 3 warrior in Pingliang Square. He was even asked for 10 white crystal coins by the other party before he could escape. This matter had already spread throughout the entire Xiling city. Actually, a battle of this level normally wouldn't attract so many people's attention. After all, there were many powerful figures here. But the difference between the two people's levels was too big. Jumping so many levels to battle and winning in the end naturally made everyone very curious. They didn't expect it to be her. Chu Liyue was already used to such gazes and discussions. She completely ignored them and walked forward. Instead, it was Duan Ziyu who couldn't help but take a few more glances at her. Actually, he already heard about this matter yesterday. But thinking about it now, he still felt that it was somewhat unbelievable. Especially on this day of interacting with Chu Liyue, the feeling she gave people was gentle and noble from beginning to end, not like that kind of ruthless character at all. But the person personally selected by the Deputy General was naturally not ordinary. Furthermore, he clearly felt that the aura on Chu Liyue's body was actually much stronger than yesterday. This girl might really be hiding her abilities. Xuanji Square was the second largest square in the entire Xiling city. It was enough to accommodate 100,000 people at the same time. Chu Liyue arrived with the crowd and saw the all-too-familiar square. Around it were circular steps. At this time there were already many people waiting on top, clearly wanting to watch the show. After all, in this Wanzheng competition, all the participants were cultivators with the Daijing Yuan Meridian. One could imagine how exciting the competition would be. Around the competition grounds, the black cavalry were dressed in armor and holding spears, neatly lined up. And on the square there were also many people standing scattered around. At a rough glance there were at least 200 to 300 people. And there were still people going up continuously. Those people were obviously cultivators with the Daijing Yuan Meridian. Chu Liyue narrowed her eyes. Among those people there were actually a few familiar faces. This Wanzheng competition didn't seem to be specially prepared for cultivators with the Daijing Yuan Meridian outside Heaven's Canopy. Some of the younger generation's geniuses in Xiling City had also come. What exactly were Shangguan Wan and the rest planning to do? Miss Chu, I can only send you here, Duan Ziyu said in a low voice. I will wait for you there. Chu Liyue nodded slightly and walked forward. When she reached the edge of the square, two soldiers blocked her way. Please show your identity. Chu Liyue thought for a moment and raised her hand, showing the bracelet on her wrist to the two of them. The two of them confirmed it before retreating. Please. Chu Liyue had just gone up when she heard whispers from the side. One of the voices was rather familiar. She turned her head to look. She saw a few people standing together, pointing at her and whispering to each other. The person in the middle was Zhao Yunji, who had a grudge with her the day before. When she noticed Chu Liyue looking over, she didn't feel guilty. Instead, she sneered and raised her voice. Yes, it's her. The few people beside her looked disgusted. She's really just a stage 3 cultivator? Where did she get the guts to offend our Soaring Cloud sect? She doesn't look old, but she's very arrogant. Zhao Yunji's eyes flashed with a hint of smugness as she walked in front of Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue, I want to challenge you. Do you dare to accept? Chapter 481. Of course, Chu Liyue wouldn't reject someone who was rushing to her death. You're welcome. Zhao Yunji didn't expect Chu Liyue to agree so easily. She didn't have the chance to say the threats and sarcastic words she had prepared. She couldn't help but feel aggrieved. She said in a low voice, You can be as arrogant as you want. Later you'll know the consequences of offending the Soaring Cloud sect. In Xiling City there were many sects and factions. The Soaring Cloud sect was one of the best. It was undeniably a first-rate sect. Chu Liyue's gaze swept across the people behind her. From their clothes and the symbol on their left chest, she could tell that they were young disciples of the Soaring Cloud sect. However, she wasn't very familiar with them. Other than the Soaring Cloud sect's sect master and a few elders, whom she had seen more often, the other disciples were rarely seen. Sensing Chu Liyue's gaze, Zhao Yunji thought that she was afraid and said proudly, You don't have to look. There's no need to look anymore. Those are the most outstanding geniuses among the younger generation of the Soaring Cloud sect. With your background and strength, it's impossible for you to be on par with them in your entire life. If I didn't persuade them this time, they would have already taken action for me. At that time, you wouldn't even be able to leave this square standing. She moved closer and stared at Chu Liyue, then sneered, You don't have to thank me. There's no need to thank me. I just wanted to deal with you personally. Chu Liwei raised her eyebrows slightly. This Zhao Yunji looked gentle and harmless, but her heart was ruthless. Unfortunately, there was something wrong with her brain. Previously, in the northern borderline, Qin Shiyuan was defeated by Jian Fengqi in one move. Even if they didn't know Jian Fengqi, they should have done a private investigation to confirm the opponent's identity. Moreover, Jian Fengqi's appearance was very special. It wasn't hard to find out if they asked around. However, it was obvious that they didn't ask anything after returning to Xiling. Did they really think that they were invincible with just the Soaring Cloud sect? The Soaring Cloud sect was good, but in Xiling there were many stronger sections. Chu Liwei smiled slightly. I'm looking forward to it. Seeing that Chu Liwei was so stubborn, Zhao Yunji was annoyed. She said angrily, then come with me to sort the items now. My opponent for the first round will be you. Chu Liwei frowned. Sort. Ha. You don't even know such an important thing. Zhao Yunji widened her eyes in amusement and mockery as she looked at Chu Liwei with disdain. It's probably because your background is too lowly, so no one is willing to tell you, right? Chu Liwei scanned her surroundings and indeed saw two elders in white robes standing in the middle of the square. In front of them was a gigantic black jade board. Upon closer inspection, it turned out that it was a list of names. The names were arranged in pairs in order. In front of the jade board there were also many people standing in pairs. They seemed to be waiting for the two old men to write their names. The first round is done in pairs? Chu Liwei asked with narrowed eyes. Of course. Moreover, this is only the preliminaries. After this round, it will be considered the official competition. And those who are eliminated in this round will be kicked out. Therefore, Zhao Yunji decided to step on Chu Liwei from the start. Why? You don't dare? Chu Liwei chuckled. Why wouldn't I dare? Just go. With that, she walked towards the center. Zhao Yunji looked at her carefree expression and thought to herself, let's see how long you can pretend to be dumb. On the square, although everyone seemed to be standing casually, they were all secretly observing others. Who knew which one of them would be his opponent in the next round? There was no harm in knowing more about it. Chu Liwei and Zhao Yunji walked over one after another and immediately attracted the attention of many people. There was no other reason. It was because Chu Liwei was the only stage 3 warrior in the square. It was impossible not to be conspicuous. Some people's gazes toward Chu Liwei immediately became strange. Are you kidding me? There's actually a stage 3 warrior participating? He's really bold. Doesn't she know how cruel the competition is? Or is she just here to have fun? This is Xiling. Who dares to say that they're here to have fun? I'm envious of the girl beside her. She's definitely going to win this round. Why didn't I notice it just now? Chu Liwei pretended not to hear anything and quietly queued up. Soon it was her and Zhao Yunji's turn. Just put the beads on your bracelets here. One of the elders pointed at a groove at the bottom of the jade board. I'll go first. Zhao Yunji was one step ahead of him and placed her bead on it. The bronze bead emitted a faint light. Then a name suddenly appeared in the empty space on the jade board. Zhao Yunji. Below her name, a small line of words appeared at the same time and quickly disappeared. Chu Liwei, who was standing nearby, could clearly see that the line of words said, Soaring Cloud Sect Xianxia. This was an indication of her identity. The two old men glanced at each other and nodded their heads. The old man standing on the left even had a smile on his face. I heard that you're only 17 years old this year and are already at the beginner stage of stage 5. Not bad. If you perform well, Soaring Cloud Sect will have another outstanding disciple. Zhao Yunji was flattered. Thank you, Elder Qiushi. Before she came, she had heard from her cousin that Elder Qiushi was also from Soaring Cloud Sect. Although he later became an elder in the palace, he had always taken care of Soaring Cloud Sect. Elder Qiushi was even more satisfied that the girl in front of him knew his name. Chu Liwei couldn't help but curl her lips. Qin Shiyuan and Zhao Yunji arrived at Xiling later than her, but in just one night, Zhao Yunji not only knew the process of the competition, she even knew the identity of the exam elder. It could be said that she didn't put in any effort. Who are you in a group with? Elder Qiushi asked. Zhao Yunji smiled sweetly and pointed at Chu Liwei behind her. It's her. Seeing that Chu Liwei was only a stage 3 warrior, Elder Qiushi's smile faded a little. You just have to follow what she did before. Chu Luiyue didn't mind his cold attitude. She stepped forward and put the bead into the groove. A faint glow flashed. On the jade board, her name finally appeared next to Zhao Yunji's name. Chu Luiyue. Soon, a small line of words appeared below. Dragon Teeth Mountain Jianfeng. Chu Luiyue blinked. That's not right. She was brought here by Mu Qinghe. How could Jianfeng Qi be here? Lu Xingyi didn't even ask yesterday. He must have thought that she was brought here by Jianfeng Qi. However, Zhao Yunji's expression froze. Jianfeng Qi, the rumored tyrant of Xiling City, the young master of Dragon Teeth Mountain, Jianfeng Qi? Digression. Your phone has been fixed. Please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 482. She subconsciously wanted to deny this conjecture, but that line of words was clear. Dragon Teeth Mountain Jianfeng. In the entire Xiling City, there was only one Dragon Teeth Mountain and only one Jianfeng Qi. She only knew this person because she had heard her cousin mention him when they were chatting. Dragon Teeth Mountain and Soaring Cloud sect had been enemies for many years, and they had always disliked each other. In his description, this Jianfeng Qi was arrogant, unruly, and had no regard for the law. He had even scolded the 9 elders of Soaring Cloud sect to their faces. The entire Soaring Cloud sect hated Jianfeng Qi to the core. However, he was the young master of Dragon Teeth Mountain. His status was honorable and he was extremely powerful. Not to mention normal people, most of the aristocratic families in Xiling City had to be polite when they saw him. The young man they met that day, could it really be? She felt uneasy and walked to the side with shaky footsteps. When Elder Qiushi and Elder Duanmu Chun saw Jianfeng Qi's name, they were both shocked. When they looked at Chu Luiyue again, their expressions changed slightly. Chu Luiyue put away the pearl and noticed that the duo's expressions were a little off. He asked with a smile, "Is there anything else, elders?" Elder Duanmu Chun shook his head. "Don't worry, your serial number is 53. Go and prepare." "Yes." Chu Luiyue responded and turned around to walk to the other side. The 2 elders looked at each other and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. He didn't seem to be sent out this time, right? But this list was registered after Lu Xingyi met him personally. Can't be wrong. Maybe we just didn't know. Other than that, there seemed to be no other explanation. The people behind them had already walked forward. The 2 of them stopped and continued to order the items. Zhao Yunji's mind was in a mess. She quickly walked to the Soaring Cloud sect disciples who were talking with her. Seeing that her expression was not right, they quickly asked, "Yunji, what's wrong?" Zhao Yunji's fingers twisted together and she asked anxiously, "That Jianfeng Qi, what does he look like?" They were all stunned. "Why are you suddenly asking about him?" Zhao Yunji forced a smile. "I've heard my cousin mention it before. I'm a little curious." Of course he looks like a scourge." A round-eyed woman had an indignant look on her face, and there was a hint of resentment in her eyes. Another woman smiled and said, "Don't scare Yunji. He was just asking. Also, don't let other people see you like this, lest they bring up another troublesome matter." As soon as he said that, the round-eyed woman stomped her feet and restrained herself a little. Jianfeng Qi was tall and was even taller than the average man. He was also born with a pair of icy blue eyes. This was the special feature of Dragon Teeth Mountain's bloodline. If you see him, you should be able to recognize him at a glance. However, Jianfeng Qi has too many grudges with the Soaring Cloud sect, so it's better not to see him. The more Zhao Yunji listened, the colder her heart became. Sure enough. Not only had she met him, she had also severely offended him. That was the young master of Dragon Teeth Mountain. He was someone who was on equal footing with the elders of the Soaring Cloud sect. Even the Soaring Cloud sect master tolerated him. Her cousin was only one of the close to 200 disciples under the sect master. Fighting with Jianfeng Qi was like hitting a rock with an egg. Not to mention her. Zhao Yunji closed her eyes in despair. Even if her cousin hadn't seen Jianfeng Qi with his own eyes, he should be able to guess it. What should she do? "Yunji, are you okay?" Those people asked with concern. "Are you too nervous?" "It's fine. Your opponent, Chu Luiyue, is only a stage 3 warrior. He's definitely not your match." Hearing that, Zhao Yunji's expression became slightly better. "That's right. At this point, even if she went to apologize, Chu Luiyue and Jian Fengqi definitely wouldn't go easy on her. Rather than that, she might as well win this round first. As long as she performed well in the Wanjing competition, they wouldn't be able to do anything to her. Thank you, brothers and sisters. I'll definitely work hard. Your opponent is called Chu Luiyue, right? A young man suddenly thought of something and quickly asked. Zhao Yunji nodded. That young man's expression instantly became very strange. It's actually her. Zhao Yunji and the others were confused. That young man clapped his hands and hurriedly reminded them. Did you guys forget that there was a rumor in Xiling City yesterday that a Stage 3 girl defeated a Stage 5 warrior? I just remembered that the girl's name is Chu Luiyue. Everyone was dumbfounded. Zhao Yunji was the most shocked. There's such a thing? How is that possible? Although some warriors can fight above their level, this is too exaggerated. She had been busy with the Wanjing competition yesterday and didn't know about this rumor. It's true. Many people saw it at Pingliang Square. Everyone suddenly fell silent and looked at Zhao Yunji. Speaking of which, Zhao Yunji was also a beginner Stage 5 warrior. Zhao Yunji clenched her fists. So what if the rumor is true? Who knows if it's a coincidence? Or did she use some despicable means? No matter what, Chu Luiyue definitely can't win against me. She could only win today and not lose. While Zhao Yunji was anxious, Chu Luiyue was leisurely and carefree. Jian Fengqi's name was only seen by the few people standing nearby. It hadn't spread, so everyone looked at her the same way as before. She stood there alone, looking calm and collected, but in fact she was listening to the conversation of the people next to her. So that means that the third princess won't be coming today? That's right. Now that the entire Tianling dynasty's matters have piled up on her, this is only the first round of the preliminaries. Of course she won't come personally. However, I heard that the third princess fiancé, the eldest young master of the Jiang family, will be coming. As if struck by lightning, Chu Luiyue's blood froze. Digression. After today's event, mobile users please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 483. The eldest young master of the Jiang family? The eldest son of Grand Tutor Jiang Lizhua? Wasn't he the princess in the past? Shu. Do you want to die? How dare you say such things? What's wrong? When I came to West Hill 2 years ago, didn't I say? You said it was 2 years ago. Today is different from the past. Many things have changed. That person back then. Something went wrong with his cultivation. This kind of thing is more or less disgraceful. Now the entire Tianling dynasty doesn't mention it anymore. Besides, after that person passed away, the third princess was devastated. Fortunately, this eldest young master of the Jiang family accompanied and comforted her, so she finally got through it. In addition, there were many things that they needed to deal with together, so it was normal for them to be together over time. No matter what, the two of them are not suitable together. Xianxia. Where's he? Back then, she and the eldest young master of the Jiang family were about to get married. Anyway, these things are not something we can discuss in private. Don't say the wrong thing again. That person will be here later. The few of them quickly quieted down. Chu Luiyue was familiar with the appearance of one of them, but the rest were very unfamiliar. She quickly retracted her gaze and lowered her eyes to hide the emotions in her eyes. So after her death, there were such rumors. After a while, the corners of her lips curled up into a cold smile. Shengguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing were really capable. They inverted black and white and mixed up right and wrong. Back then, it was clearly the two of them who secretly had an affair and betrayed her. In the end, in the eyes of everyone, she became the person who couldn't be mentioned. Jiang Yuqing was her fiancé more than a year ago, but now he was Shengguan Wan's. However, everyone was quite supportive of this and there was almost no criticism. It was really hard on those two people to put in so much effort. Everyone, according to your order, go to your positions. Elder Qiushi stood in the air, his qi deep in his dantian and his voice spread far and wide. Chu Luiyue looked up. It turned out that everyone had finished their order. Elder Duanmu Chun waved his sleeves and the huge black jade slab quickly flew to the west side of the square. It floated there quietly, emitting a faint glow. Almost everyone in the square could see the rows of names on it. Elder Duanmu Chun followed closely behind, leaping to the side of the jade slab. The huge square was suddenly split into squares. A number appeared on each square and they were arranged in order. Everyone walked towards their own squares. Chu Liyue walked to the number 53 foot and looked up at her surroundings. Xuanji Square was extremely spacious. Even though it was divided into 100 squares, each square didn't look small. It was even bigger than the biggest competition venue in country Yaochen. Most of the people were already in position. Chu Liyue glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw Zhao Yunji walking over. However, there was something wrong with her complexion. Her eyebrows were drooping, and her eyes looked a little dazed as if she had just suffered a serious injury. She was completely different from the arrogant and haughty person from before. Sensing Chu Liyue's gaze, Zhao Yunji looked up. Chu Liyue clearly saw the flash of panic in her eyes. Panic? Interesting. Chu Liyue crossed his arms, tapped his chin lightly and laughed. It seemed like Zhao Yunji finally knew something she should have known. What are you laughing at? Zhao Yunji was very sensitive at this moment. When she saw the smile on Chu Liyue's face, she immediately exploded. Chu Liyue's smile didn't change. I wanted to laugh, so I naturally laughed. If you want to order me around, it won't be too late to do so after you beat me. If Zhao Yunji heard this before, she would only think that Chu Liyue was courting death. However, after hearing those rumors, she felt a little uneasy when she looked at Chu Liyue now. This Chu Liyue might really have some tricks up his sleeve. Of course I will beat you, Zhao Yunji said stubbornly. Chu Liyue couldn't be bothered with her. He chuckled softly and looked at Elder Qiushi. Zhao Yunji walked to the same square. Her hands were clenched into fists and her throat was dry. Elder Qiushi looked around. When the surrounding voices quietened down, he stroked his beard in satisfaction and said in a deep voice, "The purpose of this Wanzheng competition is to recruit talents. Those who can participate in this competition are all cultivators with the Daijing Yuan Meridian from all over the world. Those who can stand in this square are all geniuses who are sought after by the world." As soon as he finished speaking, many people in the square revealed proud expressions. However, even if you have top-notch talent, you still need to go through many trials and hardships to become a peerless expert. Without enough resources and a firm belief, you will achieve nothing. Everyone's expression became more serious. Some of you are from the Tianling dynasty, but most of you are from outside Heaven's canopy. Although the geniuses of the Tianling dynasty have resources, they may not have enough vigilance because they have been living in comfort for a long time. As for the geniuses outside Heaven's canopy, they may have top-notch talent, but their cultivation is often delayed because of the lack of resources. Therefore, the third princess and the prince consort decided to hold this Wanzheng competition. I believe most of you already know that today's competition is just a preliminary round. There will be 3, 8, 12 participants and you will compete in pairs. Only the winner can enter the next round. As long as you can successfully enter the next round, everyone will receive generous rewards. And those who don't have a sect will be given special permission to enter one of the many sects in Xiling City. Everyone was in an uproar. This meant that as long as they won today's competition, they would be able to enter a Xiling sect unconditionally. This was a huge temptation. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 484. Of course, this didn't mean that as long as you entered the next round, you could casually choose a sect. After you say which sect you want to join, you still have to pass the sect's examination. If you don't pass, you have to choose again. The surrounding noise quieted down, but most people were still enthusiastic. Actually, this was very normal. After all, the sects that could establish themselves in Xiling were almost the most outstanding sects in the entire Tianling dynasty. They had always been very strict in their selection of disciples. If anyone could enter, it would be too ridiculous. However, everyone here is a genius with a Daijing Yuan Meridian. I believe that the various sects will also welcome you. Elder Qiushi added, I believe that everyone also understands that the better your performance in the Wanzheng competition, the more you will be favored by the powerful sects. The chances of you being selected will also be higher. Everyone had different expressions. Some were excited, some were nervous, and some seemed to be fantasizing about which sect to choose. The top 100 contestants are now in position. After the competition starts, there is no time limit. It will only end when one side admits defeat or is kicked out of the square they are in. After every competition ends, those who are ranked behind will take their place. The loser's name will automatically disappear from this black jade board. Elder Qiushi looked around. Now do you have any other questions? Elder Qiushi. A youth raised his hand and asked loudly. In this competition, is it fine as long as you win regardless of the methods used? Elder Qiushi stroked his beard. That's right. As long as you don't kill, there are no other restrictions. If you win, it will be your ability. Some of the foreign contestants from Heaven's Canopy had a slight change in expression. With this sentence, it was easy to imagine how cruel and intense the Wanjing competition would be. However, most of the people in Xiling City had excited looks on their faces. There were even waves of excited cheers coming from the spectator stands. Zhao Yunji's face was a little pale as she muttered softly, This, how can this be? Isn't this too unruly? Chu Liwei glanced at her and raised his eyebrows. Why, didn't your cousin tell you that it has always been like this in Xiling? Countless powerhouses from all over the world had gathered in Xiling City. The concept of the strong being respected was more deeply rooted in the hearts of the people here than anywhere else. This place seemed to be bustling with activity, but in fact, there were bloody and cruel battles happening every day in various parts of the city. Every day, countless people died on the streets because they were weak. It was already pretty good that the Wanjing meet only requested that no one be killed. Zhao Yunji bit her lip and didn't say anything for a while. She had only heard her cousin talk about how noble and powerful Xiling City was, but he had never mentioned any of this. I hereby announce that the preliminaries for the Wanjing competition begin. Elder Qiushi shouted in a deep voice. In the arena, someone reacted quickly and took the initiative to strike first. The entire square instantly fell into a chaotic battle. Fortunately, each square was spacious enough, and there was a layer of enchantment glowing with a faint silver light around it, making it easy for everyone to distinguish and not confuse each other. Many people's gazes were focused on Chu Liwei and Zhao Yunji's competition area. That rank 3 warrior is the lowest level here, right? I think they'll be the first to finish this round. That might not be the case, right? Haven't you heard that Chu Liwei is quite strong? You're saying that she's the girl who defeated Wu Zhao. I heard that she came with Jian Fengqi and has Jian Fengqi's support. Maybe Wu Zhao went easy on her? It's true. How can it be so mysterious? I heard that many sect disciples are participating in the competition this time. Must be very exciting. The audience was almost full and there was a hubbub of voices. Looking around, most of them were discussing the competition in full swing. However, in the direction that the black jade board was facing, there was a small area that was somewhat out of place from the surroundings. Those few people looked very ordinary, but the aura on them was unapproachable. In the West Hill, there were too many people with power and influence. If one wasn't careful, they wouldn't even know how they died. Therefore, the people around them also stayed obediently and didn't take the initiative to provoke these people. One of them was a man in an aqua blue robe. Although his appearance was ordinary, his aura was noble and he didn't seem like an ordinary person. His gaze swept across the black jade board lightly, and a playful smile appeared on his face. Interesting, there's actually a rank 3 warrior participating this time? A man beside him nodded and said. I heard that she just came yesterday and caused quite a commotion in Pingliang Square. She's much stronger than ordinary rank 3 warriors. To be able to fight above her level, she must have some special ability. Furthermore, she's 2 whole levels above her. Even if her realm is low now, her potential is not bad. The man in the aqua blue robe's gaze landed on the square. A slender and exquisite figure of a young girl came into view. From his angle, he could only see the simple hair tied up and the red skirt fluttering in the wind. The black and red complemented each other. It was clearly a simple outfit, but there was an indescribable charm to it. From afar, it looked like a vivid and flowing painting. The man beside him quietly made a hand gesture. He narrowed his eyes. That girl's Daijing Yuan Meridian is actually intermediate. She doesn't look old. She said she's only 14 years old. Where did she come from? Country Yaochen. The man in the aqua blue robe suddenly paused. Yaochen? Isn't that the place Mu Qinghe went to? Yes. And she was brought here by Jian Fengqi. The man beside him noticed that his expression was a little off and asked apprehensively, "Eldest young master, what's wrong? Is there something wrong?" The man pondered for a moment and shook his head. Nothing. It seemed like there was more to this matter than met the eye. In the arena, Zhao Yunji pulled out a blue rapier. An icy aura quickly spread from it. Very quickly, a thin layer of frost formed on the thin sword. Even the ground under her feet began to be covered with a thin layer of ice. Ice river slash. Zhao Yunji poured all the force in her body into the blue rapier. A silver light quickly spread from the hilt. It was like a layer of ice breaking. A cracking sound rang out, and a piercingly cold and ferocious sword chi surged out. Zhao Yunji tiptoed and leaped up. The blue rapier pierced straight for Chu Liyue's heart. This ice river sword was made of extremely precious ice iron and was filled with the icy aura of an extremely cold place. It was extremely powerful. It had never tasted defeat in countless battles over the years. Zhao Yunji stared at Chu Liyue. To be able to lose to my ice river sword, you didn't come here in vain. With that, the sword approached his throat. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 485. A ball of red flame suddenly burned in Chu Liyue's palm. The flame danced happily like a fairy, causing the surrounding temperature to rise by a lot. Celestial physician? Zhao Yunji was shocked, but then she sneered. Turning the force into fire is good for refining medicine, but if you want to use it to win this competition, you're too naive. Chu Liyue didn't say anything. He flicked his finger and the fist-sized ball of flame instantly flew out. In an instant, it landed on the tip of Zhao Yunji's ice river sword. You overestimate yourself. Break. Zhao Yunji shouted in a low voice. A gust of cold air surged out from the tip of the sword. She wanted to completely freeze the ball of flame. However, the scene in her imagination didn't happen. The ball of flame wasn't affected at all. Instead, it turned into a stream of fire and quickly burned along the ice river sword. Crackle. Ice and fire collided. The layer of frost that covered the ice stream sword suddenly exploded. Countless pieces of ice were wrapped in sparks and scattered in all directions. However, before they landed on the ground, the ice had completely melted and evaporated. Finally, when they landed on the ground, only burning flames were left. As the flames burned, the layer of ice that had just frozen on the ground began to quickly melt. The remaining flames spread all the way to the sword hilt. A scalding heat came from the sword hilt. Ah! Zhao Yunji cried out in pain and uncontrollably threw the ice river sword. Bang! Bang! Zhao Yunji looked over in panic and anger, only to see that the ice river sword had been completely wrapped in the red flame. If she had let go a little later, her hand would definitely have been burned. You, what the hell is this? She said angrily, but there was still some lingering fear in her eyes. Although she wasn't a celestial physician, she had seen many since she was young. There had never been a celestial physician's flame that was so terrifying. There was definitely something wrong with Chu Liyue's force flames. It's not a damn thing, but you'll soon find out if you can use it to win this competition. The origin power within Chu Liyue's body converged, and a ball of flames quickly condensed on each of his palms. Zhao Yunji shuddered. If that flame landed on his body, even the cold energy stored in the ice stream sword was unable to resist this flame, let alone a mortal like her? Zhao Yunji took 2 steps back and crossed her fingers in front of her. Shadow lock. The void in front of her suddenly rippled. It was like a gentle breeze blowing across the surface of a lake, creating circles of ripples. A ripple slowly spread towards Chu Liyue's calf. Wherever it passed, it actually left a clearly visible black spatial crack. The first lock, gushing spring. Chu Liyue could clearly feel that the space where the ripples passed through had become viscous. His feet, in particular, felt as if they were bearing 1,000 pounds of weight. It was difficult to move. The scattered flames on the ground were also affected by this strong pressure and became much weaker. Zhao Yunji was overjoyed. This move was also one of her trump cards. Because it consumed a lot of origin power, she rarely used it. She didn't think that she would be forced to this step after just exchanging blows with Chu Liyue. Zhao Yunji was very sullen, but she knew that there was no other way. Chu Liyue's strength was clearly much stronger than she had imagined. If she didn't get rid of him quickly, it would only be more troublesome later. The second lock. Origin Gate. The second ripple appeared and spread towards Chu Liyue's waist. Zhao Yunji's origin core continued to surge with origin power, crazily consuming it. This shadow-locking art was actually a genuine earth-rank martial technique. The first two locks were just a foundation, the real power was in the third lock. As long as she could successfully use the third lock, she would be able to fully display the power of an earth-rank martial skill. However, to the current her, using the third lock would exhaust all of her energy. In other words, if she couldn't win with this attack, she would have no chance at all. But how could she not win? Zhao Yunji quickly looked up at Chu Liyue and saw that she was indeed trapped in the first two locks. Even the flames in her hands were almost extinguished. Zhao Yunji's heart calmed down. The first two locks were enough to temporarily stop the origin power in Chu Liyue's body from circulating. She wanted to use this time to prepare the third lock. Directly defeat Chu Liyue. The third ripple finally formed. Zhao Yunji suppressed the excitement in her heart and recklessly poured out origin power. Her face was a bit pale and her vision seemed to be a bit blurry. This was a sign of exhaustion. However, Zhao Yunji didn't stop. Once she thought about how she could directly defeat Chu Liyue this time, she was filled with excitement. Buzz. As the ripples in front of her became complete bit by bit, a frightening aura gradually spread out. Many people in the audience noticed the commotion and couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Earth-rank martial skill? The preliminaries have just begun. How can someone use such a move? That's Zhao Yunji and Chu Liyue? She's actually so afraid of Chu Liyue? Didn't you see earlier? Chu Liyue broke Zhao Yunji's origin weapon. If Zhao Yunji doesn't counterattack, Chu Liyue will win. With this earth-rank martial skill, Chu Liyue is definitely going to lose. Under the gaze of countless pairs of eyes, the third ripple was finally completed. Third lock. Heaven's Spirit. Zhao Yunji pushed forward with both hands. The last ripple slowly but firmly covered Chu Liyue's head. Chu Liyue stared at the ripple that contained a powerful aura. Her black eyes were like black jade as they flashed with a cold light. At the same time, the origin power in her body continuously flowed into her hands. Seeing that Chu Liyue didn't move, Zhao Yunji thought that she was afraid and couldn't help but fiercely say, "It's too late to admit defeat now. Today I will." Boom! Before she could finish her sentence, two balls of flames suddenly appeared in Chu Liyue's palms. In the next moment, her hands clenched together. The two balls of flames fiercely collided. The dazzling flames rose and almost enveloped her entire body. The ripples in front of her waist disappeared in an instant. Zhao Yunji's body shook and blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Her aura instantly weakened by a lot. The flames quickly transformed into a red flaming whip. Chu Liyue swung her wrist. Pop! The flaming whip fiercely hit the rune below. Crack! The rune broke. Zhao Yunji's face was as pale as a ghost. No. Chu Liyue swung her whip. She whipped the last rune in front of her. The sound of something breaking through the air rang out. The flaming whip actually directly slashed through the middle of the rune. Zhao Yunji looked up in shock and saw the crimson flaming whip whipping towards her. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 486. Zhao Yunji tiptoed and quickly retreated. She even left behind a few afterimages. Flap. The crimson flaming whip lashed heavily on the ground, instantly leaving a charred mark. Although Zhao Yunji barely dodged it, her left arm was not spared. The flaming whip had struck her forearm, leaving a bloody wound on it. Her entire sleeve had been set ablaze. Seeing that the flames were about to spread, Zhao Yunji didn't even think about it and removed the entire sleeve. Rip, her slender arm was exposed to everyone's eyes. Although there was a shocking wound on her forearm that was dripping with blood, the girl's fair skin still attracted a lot of attention. Her pitiful appearance caused many people to become restless. All kinds of gazes fell on her, making Zhao Yunji feel ashamed and resentful. She had a noble status and outstanding talent in Suiyang Empire. When had she ever suffered such humiliation? But before she could react, Chu Liyue's second whip had already landed. Zhao Yunji retreated again. That Zhao Yunji's movement technique is not bad. Looking at her speed, she's almost at the middle stage of the 5th level. She should be able to wait. Chu Liyue also moved. How is she so fast? Chu Liyue jumped up, and her figure was like the wind as she quickly rushed forward. More importantly, her speed didn't seem to be much slower than Zhao Yunji's. The man in the blue robe's eyes suddenly focused. This movement technique looked a bit familiar, but after looking at it for a while he felt that it wasn't. That Zhao Yunji is going to lose, he said calmly. The man next to him was startled. Eldest young master, why do you say that? Although that Zhao Yunji suffered a bit before, she's still 2 levels higher than Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue won't be able to catch up to her. No, she can catch up. The man laughed. The others looked at each other and couldn't help but look over. At this moment, Chu Liyue suddenly threw out the fire whip in her hand. In the next moment she tiptoed and jumped onto the fire whip. With the help of the fire whip, she leaped continuously. It was actually following the path of the flame whip. The distance between the two of them was shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. She was dressed in red and her black hair fluttered in the wind. She was as light and lively as a phoenix dancing in a raging inferno, dazzling everyone. Zhao Yunji watched as Chu Liyue sprinted towards her. Her heart was beating so fast that it was about to jump out of her mouth. She tried her best to retreat, but Chu Liyue was faster than her. She hurriedly looked back and was shocked to find that she was about to be forced out of the realm. Once she crossed the line she would lose. Zhao Yunji clenched her teeth, turned around and headed in another direction. A cold smile appeared on Chu Liyue's lips. She had no interest in continuing to play with Zhao Yunji. Time to end this. Chu Liyue took a deep breath and suddenly leaped. It landed on the tail of the flame whip. A silver light flew out from her hand. Zhao Yunji suddenly felt a cold wind coming from behind her. Danger. She almost instinctively rolled on the ground. But something stabbed into the ground where she was just a moment ago. Zhao Yunji hurriedly looked over and saw that it was an extremely sharp dagger. Because a lot of power had been injected into it, the tail was still trembling slightly. Zhao Yunji heaved a sigh of relief. However, just as she was thinking of how to counterattack, she suddenly felt a chill in her chest. She slowly looked down and saw that a flying dagger as thin as a cicada's wing had pierced through her chest. If it had been just a little bit more, it would have pierced through her heart. Her footsteps suddenly stopped. Her entire body seemed to have been frozen as she stood there, frozen on the spot. Drip. A drop of blood suddenly fell. It was such a soft sound, but she heard it very clearly. That was because it was her blood. Chu Liyue jumped down from the flame whip and landed in front of Zhao Yunji. I'll give you a chance to admit defeat, Chu Liyue said. A pool of blood slowly appeared on Zhao Yunji's clothes and then slowly spread in all directions. She opened her mouth and it was filled with the smell of blood. Her voice was so weak that it was almost undetectable. However, just as everyone thought that she was going to admit defeat, she suddenly flung something out from her sleeve. Countless sharp silver needles flew out together. And there was a faint blue-purple light on it. It was clearly dipped in poison. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The two of them were very close to each other and this hidden weapon attack was too sudden. Chu Liyue couldn't dodge it at all. Chu Liyue suddenly sneered and waved her sleeve as well. A silver barrier suddenly appeared and enveloped her. It was the crystal barrier. That crystal barrier was slightly damaged. Before they parted, Rongxiu gave her a new one. Thud thud thud. Those silver needles hit the crystal barrier and were quickly bounced back. Zhao Yunji was shocked and immediately dodged. However, a few silver needles still pierced her body. Her pale and dry lips immediately turned a bluish purple. Chu Liyue's eyes turned cold. This poison took effect very quickly and was very harmful to the body. Based on the amount of needles used just now, it wasn't hard to kill someone. Zhao Yunji was desperate and actually tried to kill her in front of everyone. On the other side, Zhao Yunji clearly knew how terrifying this poison was and quickly took out the antidote to consume. Chu Liyue put away the crystal barrier, raised her hand and held the fire whip in her hand again. Then she poured in her force again. Boom boom. The fire whip burned even more fiercely than before. There were even sparks flying everywhere. Chu Liyue swung the whip. The fire whip quickly lashed out and wrapped tightly around Zhao Yunji like a snake. Ah! Zhao Yunji was busy swallowing the antidote and was caught off guard by the fire whip. The scorching flames instantly left several scars on her body. The terrifying pain caused her mind to go blank and she almost fainted. I admit defeat. Chu Luiyue. Didn't you hear? I admit defeat. Zhao Yunji screamed hysterically. Chu Luiyue said coldly, I already gave you a chance just now. With that, the fire whip tightened again. Zhao Yunji was in so much pain that she couldn't even say a word. Chu Luiyue. She already admitted defeat. You can't continue torturing her. Elder Qiushi saw this and hurriedly shouted. Chu Luiyue looked at him in a seemingly surprised manner. So there's such a rule? Elder Qiushi, please forgive me. This is my first time here, so it's inevitable that I don't understand some things. Elder Qiushi's eyebrows were almost on fire. Put her down. Oh, okay. Chu Luiyue agreed very straightforwardly and flicked his wrist. Zhao Yunji instantly flew out. Then she fell heavily to the ground. Out of bounds. Chu Luiyue turned around and looked at Elder Qiushi with a bright smile. Is this enough? The man in the blue robe happened to see this scene. The red-clothed girl's bright smile and lively eyes were so familiar. His heart felt like it had been hit by something. A name buried deep in his heart was about to be called out. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. I think she's about to break through to rank 4 warrior. When that time comes, it'll be even easier to win. But she's got guts. I heard that Zhao Yunji was brought here by Qin Shiyuan from the Soaring Cloud sect. She had already agreed to enter the Soaring Cloud sect directly. No wonder Elder Qiushi was so angry. For so many years he had helped the Soaring Cloud sect a lot. Seeing that the Soaring Cloud sect had lost such a good seedling, how could he be indifferent? But he's an elder of the royal family after all. It's not appropriate for him to always do this. I think it's unfair for him to reprimand Chu Luiyue just now. If the person who lost was Chu Luiyue, he definitely wouldn't come out to reprimand her. Chu Luiyue sat leisurely and listened to these words. Suddenly, she felt that there seemed to be a substantial gaze in the crowd that fell on her. She was almost instinctively alarmed. She looked up. A man in a blue robe came into her sight. He looked to be in his 30s and had an ordinary appearance. But when she saw his eyes, Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. She would recognize those eyes even if they turned to ashes. Jiang Yuqing. It was obvious that he had changed his appearance, restrained his aura and sat in the crowd. The people around him should be his followers, and they were also disguised as ordinary people. No matter who saw these people, they wouldn't give them a second glance. But she was different. She had seen Jiang Yuqing's face for so many years, and she couldn't forget it even if she wanted to. And his pair of eyes that seemed gentle and affectionate, but were actually sinister and ruthless, were like a brand that was deeply engraved in her mind. Seeing that Jiang Yuqing seemed to have noticed her gaze, Chu Luiyue immediately pretended to look away unintentionally. Even though her heart was in turmoil, the expression on her face was incomparably calm. Even the curvature of her lips did not change in the slightest, making it impossible for others to see through her. No one knew how much strength she had to rely on to suppress the killing intent that was surging crazily in her heart. Everything in the royal family's ancestral hall seemed to have happened yesterday. It was vivid in her mind and incomparably vivid. However, her heart no longer felt the pain of being betrayed. There was only the thought of tearing him into pieces. She closed her eyes. That's right, someone had said that Jiang Yuqing would come. She had actually been waiting, but Jiang Yuqing didn't appear until the competition started, so she threw this matter to the back of her mind. She didn't expect him to change his identity and blend in with the crowd. Why did he do that? With his current identity he could have come openly. Why did he have to put in so much effort? And more importantly, just now when he looked at her, what was he looking at? Was it because she was the first to win the competition? Or was it something else? Chu Luiyue opened her eyes and looked around casually. She looked exactly the same as before. She looked completely relaxed as if she had won the competition. She could still feel Jiang Yuqing looking at her, but the emotions in her heart had gradually calmed down. Anyway, she had already changed her identity, and her appearance and age were different from before. She didn't believe that Jiang Yuqing would still be able to recognize her. Thinking of this, her mood became better. Now it seemed that she was in the dark while he was in the clear. On the other side, Jiang Yuqing had been staring at Chu Liyue since the first time he saw the smile on her face. At first he really thought that it was that person, but after looking carefully for a while he felt that he was thinking too much. Although their smiles were very similar, their facial features were still quite different. Moreover, Chu Liyue did look like she was only 14 or 15 years old, and that person had already been buried in the sea of fire. How could he still appear? Jiang Yuqing rubbed the space between his eyebrows. It seemed that he had been too tired during this period of time, which was why he was thinking about such nonsense. Go and investigate Chu Liyue's background. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 488. The people beside him looked at each other and found it strange. Could it be because Chu Liyue had displayed strength that far exceeded her level? But it didn't seem that simple. When eldest young master saw Chu Liyue for the first time, his reaction was very unusual. Although they thought so, they didn't show any abnormalities and said respectfully in a low voice, "Yes." After Jiang Yuqing denied the thought in his heart, he shifted his gaze elsewhere. There were hundreds of matches going on in the square at the same time. Among them, there were many more outstanding matches than Chu Liyue and Zhao Yunji's. But for some reason he couldn't focus on the other matches. Instead he would look at Chu Liyue from time to time. Every time he found that he couldn't help but look at Chu Liyue, Jiang Yuqing would secretly warn himself that this was the last time. But time and time again it seemed like he couldn't control himself. Even if he forced himself not to look at her, his mind kept recalling the smile he saw for the first time. Bright, brilliant, pure and full of spirit and craftiness. Even if the appearance was only 30% similar, this smile had 50% of the charm of that woman from many years ago. Jiang Yuqing pinched the bridge of his nose in frustration. No, this isn't right. He came today to secretly check on these Daijing Yuan Meridian cultivators. He couldn't let other things disturb his mind. After repeating this several times in his heart, he finally let out a heavy sigh. Chu Liyue naturally didn't know Jiang Yuqing's inner turmoil. On the contrary, she had completely calmed down. Before coming to West Hill, she had already made sufficient preparations. So after a short moment of surprise, she quickly accepted this matter. The most important thing now was to find out what they were planning to do by holding this Wanjing competition. She didn't believe a single word of what Elder Qirshi said earlier. Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing definitely didn't have such foresight and breadth of mind. They clearly had other motives. Other than that, she needed to investigate the current situation in the imperial court as soon as possible. Who was it that had betrayed her back then, and who was still standing by her side? Chu Liyue leaned against the chair and rested his chin on one hand, deep in thought. She was weak now, so she needed to find some reliable people to help her. Suddenly there was a commotion in the square. Chu Liyue looked up and saw that another match had ended. Another name disappeared from the black jade board. Not long after, two names disappeared almost at the same time. After she was the first to finish the competition, the other contestants in the square seemed to have been stimulated and sped up the competition. The competition instantly became more intense. Of course, this also led to more and more matches being decided. Time passed bit by bit. More and more names disappeared from the jade board. The cultivators who were carried off almost continuously. Because it was a rare opportunity, everyone wanted to win desperately. Therefore they all used their special skills, and their injuries were particularly tragic. Some who didn't want to admit defeat were beaten until they were covered in blood and passed out. There were messy bloodstains everywhere in the square. The people in the audience seats became more and more excited, and even began to shout and cheer with red faces. Many people had already taken their seats beside Chu Liyue. Seeing this, those from the Tianling dynasty were still okay, but those from outside Heaven's Canopy were more or less shocked. Chu Liyue was used to it. Gradually, the people next to her seemed to have started chatting with each other. Whether they wanted to be friends or to test each other, everyone had their own thoughts, and for a moment they were a bit friendly. However, no one took the initiative to talk to Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue didn't mind. She leisurely watched the competition on the field, glancing at the names on the jade board from time to time. Are you crazy? A hysterical scream suddenly came from the square. Chu Luiyue looked over and found that the person who was screaming was a young man. And this person wasn't unfamiliar to her. It was one of the disciples from the Lingyun sect who was with Zhao Yunji. At this moment he was holding his bleeding arm and looking at the young man in front of him in panic and anger. Are you a beast? You actually eat human flesh. Once this was said, everyone was shocked. The young man looked to be about 16 or 17 years old. He was wearing a grayish-white linen shirt that didn't fit him. Probably because it was too shabby, the clothes didn't look like it originally did. Although he wasn't short, he looked very skinny. His bones swayed in his clothes as if he was wearing a sack. He had short golden hair that was soft and shiny, reflecting a faint light under the sun. His hair covered most of his face, but one could still see his youthful face and sharp chin. At this moment he was biting a piece of bloody flesh in his mouth. It was the flesh that he had bitten off the arm of the young man in front of him. He spat out the piece of flesh expressionlessly and coldly spat out a word. Stinky. His expression and tone were so calm and indifferent, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. But it was this appearance that made one's heart turn cold. The young man standing in front of him choked. He didn't dare to ask where the word stinky came from. He instinctively felt that he didn't want to know the answer. The onlookers also unconsciously quieted down for a moment. Everyone could see that this young man wasn't simple. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and frowned slightly as if he was disgusted. The young man's heart couldn't help but beat violently. A sense of uneasiness quickly spread from the bottom of his heart. What do you want to do? He asked fiercely, his voice trembling slightly. However, the golden-haired young man didn't say anything. He only tilted his head and looked at him. Immediately, his figure suddenly took half a step back and arched his waist. His whole body was filled with amazing tension. The next moment, his figure rushed out quickly like a lone wolf in the wilderness. This time he raised his hand. His calloused hand turned into a claw and grabbed the young man's neck tightly. His speed was so fast that the young man was pushed to the ground before he could react. Cough. I admit defeat. Cough. The young man raised his head and met the cold brown eyes under the blonde hair. He shuddered and admitted defeat without hesitation. The golden-haired young man's eyes flashed with a touch of regret, as if it was a pity that he couldn't continue fighting. But in the end he still let go of his hand. Even if he won the match, his expression didn't change. After looking around, he walked down the stage. Then he walked straight to Chu Luiyue. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 489. The young man had an unruly wildness about him and he looked like a young beast. Chu Luiyue's gaze swept past the jade slab and landed on him. The two of them looked at each other. Chongwanzhou. Chu Luiyue was the first to speak with a smile. The young man nodded. Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. This young man seemed to have come from the border or a desolate swamp. She didn't expect him to have such an elegant name. This name and his temperament were really worlds apart. My name is Chu Luiyue. The young man glanced at her. I know. So many people called her just now and he heard it clearly. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment and couldn't help but laugh. This young man didn't seem to be as unreasonable as he seemed on the surface. On the contrary, he seemed to be a little naive. I need your help, Chongwanzhou said straightforwardly. Chu Luiyue leaned back in her chair with interest. Oh, what kind of help? Most people wouldn't ask strangers for help easily, but it was rare for him to say it so confidently. I want one of your kindling. Chu Luiyue's smile froze. What did you say? Chongwanzhou looked at her expression and frowned slightly. I won't ask for your help for free. In return, I can be your follower for 10 days. Chu Luiyue opened her mouth. Do you know what you're saying? 20 days. It's not a matter of time, but 30 days. That's the most. Chu Luiyue rubbed between her eyebrows, feeling a headache. This child seemed to be quite good at fighting, but why did it seem like there was something wrong with his brain? Chongwanzhou, right? Come here and sit down first. Chang Wanzhou was about to shake his head, but Chu Liwei beat him to it. If you don't sit down, I won't agree. Chang Wanzhou glanced at her, then walked to the seat next to her and sat down. Chu Liwei inadvertently glanced at him and found that his sitting posture was very standard. His shoulders and back were straight, and his aura was awe-inspiring as if he had specially learned it. If one did not look at his shabby clothes, his actions would make him look like a noble young master that could only be nurtured by an aristocratic family. After sitting down, he looked straight at Chu Liwei, obviously waiting for her answer. Chu Liwei sighed softly in his heart and raised a finger. First of all, this is not how you ask for help. Secondly, even if you agree to be my follower for a year, I'm not interested. Thirdly, do you know what a fire seed is? Chang Wanzhou's cold and unruly gaze swept across her fingers. Firstly, I'm the one who's asking for your help. Naturally, I'll do it my way. Secondly, I've said it before. 1 month at most. 1 year is absolutely impossible. Third, I know what kindling is. Aren't you a celestial physician? Naturally, you have a fire seed. Chu Liuyue's eyes widened slightly. Who told you that as long as you're a celestial physician you have a fire seed? Chang Wanzhou's face was full of vigilance. Of course someone told me. Chu Liyue facepalmed. That's a liar who lied to you. Only a top celestial physician can condense a fire seed. With my current level I can't do it no matter what. I'm sorry, I can't help you with this. Chang Wanzhou suddenly stood up, his face full of anger. Who are you calling a liar? Chu Liyue was taken aback. She did not expect Chang Wanzhou to have such a big reaction to this sentence. It seemed that the person who told him this was very important to him. Ahem, that's not what I meant. You don't seem to know much about celestial physician. I really can't help you with this matter. However, there are many outstanding celestial physician in West Hill. You can look for them. Seeing that Chu Liyue's expression was sincere and did not seem to be lying, Chang Wanzhou did not continue to be angry. I don't need any other celestial physician. Only you can help me, he said stubbornly. Chu Liyue did not immediately respond. The flames that she created were indeed different from others. Could it be? Chang Wanzhou came for this? The so-called fire seed was condensed by a celestial physician's force into flames. A celestial physician would place a fire seed in another cultivator's body. The latter would be able to use their force to continuously grow the fire seed, allowing them to use flames in battle. As the cultivator's realm increased, the fire seed in their body would also grow. In the end, some could even completely integrate the power of the fire seed and become a celestial physician. This was also the method that some people who wanted to become a celestial physician would use. However, how could it be so easy to condense a fire seed? It would consume a lot of the celestial physician's force and energy, but the success rate was extremely low. For a celestial physician, refining a fire seed was a thankless task. No one would be willing to help others refine a fire seed for free. However, in Chang Wanzhou's eyes, it seemed to be an easy task. Chu Liyue looked at his stubbornness and felt a headache coming on. It seemed to be difficult to persuade him. You don't want to help me? Chang Wanzhou asked belatedly. Chu Liyue shrugged helplessly. I'm sorry. It's not that I don't want to help, but I really can't. Chang Wanzhou said firmly. You don't want to help me. This time it was a statement. Chu Liyue's eyes flashed slightly. However, Chang Wanzhou didn't say anything else. He turned his head and looked at the arena. His expression was as indifferent and calm as ever, as if he didn't care too much about this matter. However, Chu Liyue was suddenly curious as she leaned closer and asked softly, Why? Why do you want a fire seed? You're so talented as a martial artist. There's no need for you to be a celestial physician. Chang Wanzhou glanced at her. I don't want to be a celestial physician. Then what do you want a fire seed for? Chu Liyue was even more confused. Chang Wanzhou paused. I want a fire seed to prolong my life. As he spoke, a trace of loneliness flashed across the young man's young and arrogant face. I'm looking for someone, but I haven't found her yet. I'm afraid that I'll die before I find her. His tone was indifferent. However, Chu Liyue realized that when he said that he was about to die, he didn't have any emotional fluctuations. However, when he mentioned that he couldn't find that person, he revealed a trace of unconcealable sadness. It was as if that person was more important than his life. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. Is that person very important to you? The expression on Chang Wanzhou's face had returned to normal. Hearing this, his lips pursed slightly, his chin tensed up, and he said firmly, "She's the most important person to me." Chu Liyue's heart seemed to be touched by something soft. She didn't say anything else. She just leaned back in her chair and looked at the arena. The two of them were silent, as if they had already let this matter go. Time passed by bit by bit. There were fewer and fewer names on the black jade board. More and more people were being carried off the arena. When half of the competition was over, Chu Liyue finally spoke softly. "I can help you. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network." Chapter 490. Chu Liyue was a little surprised when she said that. She wasn't the kind of person who was overflowing with sympathy. Most of the time it was more appropriate to say that she was ruthless and decisive. But for some reason when she looked at Chang Wanzhou's lonely expression and said those words, she actually felt sad for a moment. This feeling was rare. She had never been willing to take the initiative to provoke people who had nothing to do with her so as to avoid trouble. But Chang Wanzhou seemed to be different. "Really?" Chang Wanzhou heard her words and looked back. His brown eyes, covered by soft golden hair, were so bright that they seemed to be blooming for a moment. Chu Liyue suddenly stopped hesitating. The corners of her lips curled up and she smiled. "I've always been a man of my word. But according to the agreement you have to be my follower for a month." Chang Wanzhou immediately nodded. "Okay." After saying that, he stretched out his hand and bent his pinky. "The agreement is the proof." Chu Liyue's eyes twitched. "What are you doing?" Chang Wanzhou said matter-of-factly, "This is the highest level of agreement between people. Since you and I have an agreement, you can't go back on your word." Chu Liyue. Looking at Chang Wanzhou's convinced expression, Chu Liyue suddenly thought of something. "Did that person teach you this too?" As expected, the young man nodded. "Before this, she was the only one I've made an agreement with." For the second. Why did it sound like he was holding a pinky promise with her because he thought highly of her? Chu Liyue's eyes turned, but she calmly stretched out her pinky and made a pinky promise with him. The young man's hand was as cold as ice. Chu Liyue glanced at him without batting an eyelid. No wonder he said that he needed a fire seed to prolong his life. This kid looked no different from an ordinary person, but his internal organs had already been invaded by the cold evil qi. Most of the force in his body should have been frozen. Even in this state he still had such strong combat strength. She really didn't know how amazing his true strength was. "Come here." After making a pinky promise, Chu Liyue hooked his finger at him. Chang Wanzhou leaned towards her in confusion. When he got closer, Chu Liyue finally saw his face clearly. Then he was slightly stunned. This was actually an excessively beautiful young man. His skin was very white, almost translucent. Under his short blonde hair was a pair of brown eyes that were cold and proud, but pure and clean, like the snow on a mountain. Her nose bridge was high and her lips were shaped like rose petals. The corners of her mouth were naturally upturned. His smooth jawline and sharp chin made him look clean and youthful. If it weren't for the fact that his facial features and demeanor were indeed that of a young man, Chu Liyue would almost have suspected that this was a beautiful and moving girl. Chu Liyue raised his hand and ruffled his golden hair. Chang Wanzhou was stunned at first, then frowned. "What are you doing?" Looking at his messy appearance, Chu Liyue smiled and shook his little finger. "Since the alliance has been established, it's effective, right? Today is your first day as my attendant." In other words, as an attendant, one should have the self-awareness of an attendant. What's the big deal about ruffling his hair? Chang Wanzhou stared at her for a while. A hint of anger seemed to flash in his beautiful eyes, but in the end he didn't say anything. He just turned his head and sat upright. After a while he said coldly, "Got it." Chu Liyue almost laughed out loud. This Chang Wanzhou looks cold and unapproachable, but in fact he seems to be very easy to coax. She now understood why the person he was looking for deliberately deceived him with a small lie. With this thought, the last bit of conflict in Chu Liyue's heart completely dissipated. It just so happened that she was alone and helpless in West Hill. It would be good to have one more helper. Not to mention other things, Chang Wanzhou's talent and strength were very strong. His level should be at the peak of the 5th level now. According to his age, he could definitely be considered a top genius. Where are you from? Chu Luiwei asked. Nanjiang. Nanjiang. The Nanjiang of the Tianling dynasty. Chu Luiwei's eyes widened slightly. Seeing Chang Wanzhou nod, Chu Luiwei was even more shocked. The Tianling dynasty had a total of 4 major territories and they were all barren lands. Among them, the southern border was even more deserted. There were swamps everywhere and poisonous creatures were everywhere. Ordinary cultivators would die if they went there. He actually came from there. Who brought you here? For a cultivator with a Daijing Yuan meridian, he went all the way to Nanjiang to bring her back. This was too. No one brought me here. Chang Wanzhou said, I grew up in Nanjiang. I came when Thousand Reed Lake started to dry up. Chu Luiwei was dumbfounded. Seeing that she didn't speak, Chang Wanzhou added, It's been exactly 5 months. Chu Luiwei took a while to recover. So you're saying that you came to the West Hill from the Thousand Reed Lake of the southern border alone? Chang Wanzhou nodded. Chu Luiwei was shocked. What kind of person was he? He was only in his teens, but he could actually walk out of Nanjiang alone and cross thousands of miles to West Hill. A thought suddenly flashed through her mind. You came to West Hill to find that person? As expected, Chang Wanzhou said with certainty, yes. This answer was more determined and serious than before. Chu Luiwei asked hesitantly, but every participant is brought by someone. Who did you go to Exenli Garden with? Looking at Chang Wanzhou, how could he have gone alone? Chang Wanzhou frowned. That person seems to be called Yu Minhan. I don't know him, but he told me that as long as I win first place in the Wanjing competition and become famous, I'll be able to find the person I'm looking for. Chu Luiwei immediately understood. That person called Yu Minhan must have discovered Chang Wanzhou's talent and deliberately tried to rope him in and trick him into participating in the Wanjing competition. Chang Wanzhou came from Nanjiang and was inexperienced. When he heard that he could find the person he was looking for, he naturally agreed. That Yu Minhan. Do you know which sect he is from? Chang Wanzhou's expression froze and he shook his head. I didn't ask. Chu Luiwei was speechless. This child was really honest. He didn't even know who the other party was before he boarded the other party's pirate ship. When you signed up, you should have written his name and sect. Didn't you notice? Chang Wanzhou suddenly fell silent. His golden hair fell down and covered his eyes. However, Chu Luiwei inexplicably saw a trace of embarrassment. His fingers curled slightly. After a while he said, I can't read. Chu Luiwei reacted and thought to herself that she was really stupid. Chang Wanzhou grew up in Nanjiang. It was not easy for him to survive until now. Naturally, he did not have the opportunity to read and write. However, just as she was thinking of how to comfort him, Chang Wanzhou suddenly looked up and pointed at the black jade board. But I recognize your name. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 491. Chu Luiwei's lips curved slightly. She raised her eyebrows and smiled. It seems that we're quite fated. Is the person you're looking for also called by this name? Chang Wanzhou shook his head. I don't know her name. She asked me to call her Yu, so I recognized this word. Chu Luiwei rested her chin on one hand, feeling a little strange. It just so happened to be the same as her name, she asked tentatively. She's from West Hill? Chang Wanzhou nodded. Chu Luiwei's brows twitched slightly. This person can't really be a liar, right? In her previous life, after she was born, her father personally gave her the name Yu. After she was conferred the title of princess, no one in West Hill used this word to avoid taboo. Those who were born later were better off and avoided, but those who used this word before changed it to something else. That person said that she was from West Hill, but she said that her name was Yu. Either that was her original name or she made it up. If it was the former, it would be fine. Chang Wanzhou would recognize that person's face when he saw her. But if it was the latter, Chang Wanzhou's efforts would be in vain. He might not be able to find her in this lifetime. Is she very good to you? Chu Luiwei asked. Chang Wanzhou looked at her strangely. Of course. She was the one who gave me my name. Looking at his resolute expression, Chu Luiyue swallowed the words that were in her throat. If she told him this now, he would definitely not believe her. He might even be angry with her. It was better to wait for a while and understand more before telling him slowly. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue put away her thoughts and smiled. Your name is indeed very good. Chang Wanzhou turned his head expressionlessly. After a moment he said, of course. Chu Luiyue glanced at him and saw that his earlobes were slightly red. She held back her laughter and looked back at the arena. Most of the matches had already ended, and only a small number of people had yet to decide the winner. However, the atmosphere in the square was still very lively. After watching for a while, Chu Luiyue suddenly thought of something and looked at Chang Wanzhou. Alright, don't bite people in the future. Chang Wanzhou's aura suddenly turned cold. Are you calling me a vicious barbarian? He had heard such words too many times recently. Chu Luiyue flicked him on the forehead. What are you thinking? I was afraid that the blood of those people would stain you. Your current situation isn't something that can be solved with a single fire seed. If you want to live longer, you have to be obedient. Chang Wanzhou didn't expect her to mean this. The fierce expression that he had prepared immediately disappeared, and he looked a little embarrassed. According to your strength, you can easily win against most of them. Why do you have to do this? Chu Luiyue showed a trace of disdain on his face. The person who fought with you just now has a low aptitude. Don't you hate him too? Chang Wanzhou opened his mouth and lowered his head dejectedly. But I need their blood. Chu Luiyue sighed. This child really doesn't know anything about my situation, she said in a low voice. Although the cold and evil aura in your body can be suppressed temporarily with the blood of these cultivators, it will do more harm than good in the long run. Don't do this again in the future, understand? Chang Wanzhou looked at her serious expression and nodded subconsciously. Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief. For some reason she felt like she was taking care of a child. Dong. The sound of a distant bell suddenly rang out, reverberating throughout the entire square. Chu Luiyue looked up and saw that the black cavalry in the distance had knocked on the bronze bell placed in the square. She looked at the black jade board as if she had sensed something. Indeed, she saw that only half of the name was left on it. Elder Qiushi rose into the air. The Wanjing competition qualifiers are now over. Congratulations to the 196 winners. Enthusiastic cheers came from the crowd. There were also some people who were dejected, but almost no one cared. The winner was king and the loser was a bandit. This was the eternal law of Xiling City. Elder Qiushi looked at Chu Luiyue and the rest. Tomorrow morning the same envoys you will meet here. The Wanzheng competition will officially begin. His voice, which was full of energy, clearly fell into everyone's ears. Most of the contestants who had already won couldn't hide their excitement. After you go back today, I hope that you can all have a good rest and prepare for tomorrow's competition. The generous rewards are right in front of you. The doors of the top sects in Xiling will also be open to you. Elder Qiushi's words were undoubtedly a shot of adrenaline to these people. Everyone became more and more excited. Yes. Chu Luiyue smiled, stood up and said to Chang Wanzhou, "Follow me." Chang Wanzhou nodded and followed him. Many people had already jumped down from the spectator seats to celebrate with the victorious contestants. The entire square was crowded. Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou passed through the noisy crowd, intending to leave quietly. Jiang Yuqing stood up and looked at Chu Luiyue again. When he saw the golden-haired youth behind Chu Luiyue, he couldn't help but frown. He had noticed that the two of them had been talking for a long time, and now they were leaving together. Do those two know each other? He asked calmly. The man beside him followed his gaze and immediately said, that youth came from Nanjiang and seemed to have been unintentionally dragged to participate in the Wanjing competition. The two of them probably didn't know each other previously. Jiang Yuqing looked at the golden-haired youth carefully. His Yuan Meridian. Also check on him. Yes. Jiang Yuqing turned to leave, but he suddenly saw Chu Luiyue turn around and smile, ruffling the youth's hair. The youth seemed a little angry, but he only glared at her and didn't say anything. Chu Luiyue pulled him again and left through the crowd. Jiang Yuqing suddenly felt a tinge of displeasure. He didn't know where this feeling came from, but he was indeed angry. That smile shouldn't have appeared again. Even if it was just a little similar. Eldest young master, do you need me to do something? The man beside him asked softly. Jiang Yuqing said coldly, no need. With that he turned and left. Chu Liwei teased Chang Wanzhou for a while and finally stopped when she saw the pale, almost transparent face turn red. It was fine to tease the child, but it wouldn't be good to make him angry. The place I live in is a little special. You'll know when you follow me. Let's go buy some herbs later and recuperate your body. As Chu Liwei spoke, she had already made a list in her heart. TSK. This follower isn't cheap. Chang Wanzhou didn't talk much. Hearing her ramble, he mostly nodded. Stop. A man suddenly blocked in front of Chu Liwei. Chu Liwei looked up and saw an unfamiliar face. You are. The man didn't look at her. Instead he looked at Chang Wanzhou and reprimanded him with a frown. Who allowed you to run around? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 492. With such a rude reprimand, those who didn't know better would think that he was someone from Chang Wanzhou. Chu Liwei had already guessed this person's identity. You're Yu Minhan? The man glanced at her impatiently. That's right. As he spoke, he sneered at Chang Wanzhou. Did you tell her my identity? What else did you say? As he spoke, he was about to pull Chang Wanzhou away. Chu Liu's eyes were cold. She stepped forward and blocked Chang Wanzhou, smiling politely. I'm sorry, Chang Wanzhou won't go back with you. Yu Minhan sized up Chu Liuwe with an ugly expression. What do you mean by this? He's a member of my Azure Dragon gang. When it came to levels, it was very clear. Chu Liuwe understood. Oh, so it's another third-rate gang. She had heard of this Azure Dragon gang before. Its status was similar to Eight Paths sect. Among the many sects in Xiling City, it had always been at the bottom. Most of them usually behaved with their tails between their legs. Today they were so arrogant to her, probably because she was an outsider from Heaven's Canopy. Chang Wanzhou has already told me what happened before. He just came to Xiling to look for someone. And you took this opportunity to coax him into participating in the Wanjing competition. If I'm not wrong, as his leader, the better his results, the higher the reward you will receive, right? Chu Liuwe hadn't figured out the situation of the Wanjing competition before, but in these 2 days she had roughly grasped it. Sure enough, Yu Minhan's expression changed slightly. Don't talk nonsense. Chu Liuwe smiled, confirming her guess. It seemed that the reward was good, but it seemed that everyone was avoiding it. Whether I'm talking nonsense or not, you and I both know in our hearts. There's no need to be too ostentatious about this. In short, I must take Chang Wanzhou away today. And from today onwards he has nothing to do with you and the entire Azure Dragon gang. How dare you? Yu Minhan suddenly became anxious. How dare you snatch people from my Azure Dragon gang? As he spoke, he harshly slapped Chu Liuwe. Before Chu Liuwe could move, a cool breeze blew past her ear. Bang! Chang Wanzhou punched Yu Minhan's heart. Yu Minhan was caught off guard. She was and fell heavily to the ground. Chang Wanzhou's aura was awe-inspiring and he wanted to go forward again. Chu Liuwe hurriedly pulled him back. All right. It's better to avoid trouble. Besides, she didn't want to waste time and energy on this kind of thing now. She just needed to teach him a lesson and give him a warning. Chang Wanzhou stood still and looked down at Chu Liu's hand that was holding his wrist. He seemed to want to break free, but in the end he obediently stayed aside. Chu Liu's heart softened and the corners of her lips curled up. In Chang Wanzhou's mind, as a follower, it seemed that he should be obedient. Even if he didn't like it in his heart, he silently accepted it. Chu Liu let go of his hand and chuckled softly. Thank you for just now. Chang Wanzhou was stunned. He looked up at her and saw her sincere expression. There seemed to be stars blooming in her eyes. He turned his head away awkwardly. It's my duty. Chu Liu didn't say anything else. It seemed that there was still a lot to teach him in the future. What are you doing? This is wiling. Do you dare to kill me? Yu Minhan struggled to get up from the ground, only to find that Chang Wanzhou's punch had caused him serious internal injuries. He immediately covered his chest and cursed angrily. It's not difficult to kill you, but now that he's my man, I don't want you to dirty his hands. As Chu Liyue spoke, she took a step forward. She was clearly smiling, but the corners of her eyes and eyebrows carried a frightening cold pressure. Yu Minhan unconsciously took a step back. Chu Liyue said softly, "If you cooperate well, this matter will be over. Otherwise, I'd like to see how they'll react if they know that you randomly found someone to participate in the Wanjing competition." Yu Minhan's face turned pale. Then, as if he had made up his mind, he said sternly, "I don't care what you say. You want to sue my Azure Dragon gang? You're thinking too highly of yourself. Today Chong Wanzhou must stay." As soon as he finished speaking, he took out a whistle from somewhere and blew it fiercely. A moment later, several figures suddenly rushed over from behind him. They surrounded Tu Liyue and Yu Minhan. There was no need to ask to know that these were all people from the Azure Dragon gang. Chu Liyue swept her gaze over the crowd with a faint smile and teased Chong Wanzhou. "I couldn't tell that they've really put in a lot of effort for you." Chong Wanzhou frowned. "I'll take care of it." Chu Liyue facepalmed. "Children shouldn't always fight and kill all day." Chong Wanzhou's frown deepened. "I'm not a child." Chu Liyue gave him a comforting look. Seeing the two of them talking as if there was no one else around, Yu Minhan was furious. They didn't put them in their eyes at all. The Azure Dragon gang didn't have a high status in West Hill, but Chong Wanzhou's appearance was an opportunity for them to make a meteoric rise. Previously, the higher-ups had asked him to find a cultivator with the Daijing Yuan Meridian, but he was delayed by some matters. He planned to be punished when he returned, but he didn't expect to meet Chong Wanzhou. At that time he had no choice but to persuade Chong Wanzhou to go there. He planned to make up the numbers and avoid punishment. Who knew that Chong Wanzhou's strength would far exceed their expectations? Judging from the situation in today's qualifiers, he really had a chance to get into the top few. Only then did he realize that he had found a treasure. Under such circumstances, how could he let Chong Wanzhou go? Go. He waved his hand suddenly. The people next to him immediately rushed up. However, at that moment someone suddenly shouted from the side. "What kind of place is Xuanji Square? How dare you act so presumptuously?" Yu Minhan and the others glanced at them and immediately broke out in cold sweat. The people who came were the Black Cavalry. And from the looks of it, they seemed to be captains in the army. "Officer, please don't misunderstand. We're not here to cause trouble. It's just a misunderstanding. This Chu Liyue wants to steal our Azure Dragon gang's people. You must not let her go." That person walked toward Chu Liyue. Yu Minhan and the others were secretly happy. Chu Liyue would not have a good ending after provoking the Black Cavalry. However, in the next moment they saw that the person actually cupped his fists and bowed respectfully to Chu Liyue. "Miss Chu, I'm late and have startled you." The expressions on Yu Minhan and the others' faces froze. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.